Hey there, Mr. Reddit here. Welcome back to another episode of r/Entitled Parent Stories. Today we have a very special episode for you, a compilation of some of the greatest entitled parent stories we read over the past year. So sit back, relax, and enjoy a few hours of the most entitled parents you've ever heard of. And by the way, Karen assured me that if this video gets 1,000 likes, she won't try to speak to anyone's manager for an entire week. So please smash that like button. And if you're new, subscribe and turn on notifications for new stories from Reddit every single day. And become an official member of the Re-Army today, and I'll give you a shout out in an upcoming video. r/Entitled Parents. Customer argues with me about taxes to the point I cried. I've dealt with a lot of rude customers before, but recently I became a manager, and this happened on the night that just me and 2 other coworkers were closing. So, being the only manager there at the time, this situation was on me to handle, and the man wouldn't take anything I said as an acceptable answer. We've got me. We've got Horrible Man. We've got Pawn, the high school kid who was working on Horrible Man's boat. I work at a boating supply store with an extremely lenient return policy. Basically, as long as you can show proof of purchase, we will take back absolutely anything, even if what you're telling us is a bold-faced lie. We sell an extended warranty on electronics, and if something goes wrong with them, you can bring them back in and get the new ones immediately. But of course, this story isn't going to be as simple as that. So Pawn walks in with 2 subwoofers that have rusted and tells me he's working for Horrible Man and shows me the warranty for them. These are about $200 a piece. Remember that for later. Pawn:
I have a warranty for these and need to get 2 new ones.
Me: okay, perfect. Let me go see if we have them in stock. So I look up the SKUs, and of course, it is now a discontinued model. This is where it gets fun. There's a lot of different sections in the store, and marine electronics is not my strong suit. So I explain this to Pawn, and he helps me look at the specs of the new version of the subwoofers, and we decide that the new model, which is about $350, would be the right replacements. At this point, Pawn is on the phone with Horrible Man explaining the situation, and while I can't hear the entire conversation, I am able to pick up that Horrible Man wants these new ones to be honored at the $200 price so that he wouldn't have to pay anything extra. So me and my coworkers go on the hunt for the newer subwoofer, and we have one. At this point, the money is on a gift card, the full amount, taxes included. Pawn makes it clear that Horrible Man is insistent that we have the other subwoofer at our store ASAP. I tell him the other smaller store about 30 minutes away has one, but since they close earlier than we do, I can't call to make sure the system is right in saying they have one in stock. So Pawn talks to Horrible Man on the phone some more, and they decide that Pawn will just have to drive up to the other store tomorrow to get the other one. We now begin to check out. I honor the $200 price for the $350 subwoofer, but we quickly realize that there will not be enough money on the gift card to cover the taxes of having both of them at this reduced price. Upon Pawn telling Horrible Man this, Pawn hands the phone to me. Horrible Man:
I already have to send my guy and pay him more money for tomorrow to go get the other one. Why isn't this an even swap?
Me: it is an even swap on our part. The taxes must have gone up, and I don't have the power to change or take off taxes owed. Now this is where Horrible Man starts to set up his vague dominance over me to try and make me do whatever he wants.
I'm so tired of this crap. I've had to call corporate so many times, and most recently, they gave me 1,000 points for my trouble. And here we are again, having trouble.
1,000 points in our system equates to $40 in cash certificates to the store. We are sitting here arguing over $6 in taxes. It also tells me that this guy is quick to call corporate and complain about anything in order to get rewards. Me: I'm sorry, but there really is no way for me to change the amount of tax it's charging. You would have to either call back or have Pawn come back in tomorrow when the store manager is here, and maybe he could do something about it. Horrible Man:
so what you're telling me is that this is going to cost me more money? I know there's numbers you can call. This is a multi-million-dollar company, and you're telling me there's nothing you can do? You guys aren't honoring the warranty. This is unacceptable.
At this point, we're talking about a $300 loss to make this guy happy. But of course, we aren't holding up our end of the deal. Me: okay, let me go give my store manager a call. Of course, my manager doesn't pick up, and neither do any of my other managers. So I go back and tell him there's nothing I can do for him tonight at this point. Me: okay, sir, I wasn't able to reach anyone, so there's nothing I can do about the taxes tonight. I'm sorry, but you'll have to come in tomorrow when the store manager is back to see if he can do anything then. Horrible man:
I'm paying a lot of money to fix my boat, and I don't want to send him back there tomorrow. Am I supposed to ask my daughter to take time out of her day to go back tomorrow? So you're telling me this is going to cost me money either way?
Now, the way he set this question up was so that I was going to be the bad guy either way. If I said yes, I sound like a jerk, and he will call corporate because clearly he is quick to do that. And I can't say no because there is legit no way for me to fix this problem as of tonight. So I try to de-escalate the situation, but we always end up back at,
so this is gonna cost me money? Yes or no?
He finally gives me this line:
this is a multi-million-dollar company. There must be someone who you can call. Go call them.
At this point, we've been doing this for an hour in total, and I am mentally exhausted from trying to help this man. As I hand the phone back to Pon, I start to tear up, and Pon sees this. I hurry to the back to go call the customer service number, who I know can't waive taxes, but I'm feeling out of options at this point. I tearfully get on the phone with them, and they say while they can't give me a gift card to cover the tax or anything, they suggest using the discount button to take yet another $6 off of the transaction. Once I recollect myself and head back up, I explain that I'm going to try and take more money off, and this appeases horrible man. The system lets me use the button, and at this point, my mind is fried. I had drawers to close and customers who needed help, and this had gone on for far too long. Basically, it came out to having 40 cents left on the gift card. Pon left, and that's the last I've heard from them. My coworker who went to high school with horrible man's daughter told me that this girl is still in high school, and I can't get over the fact that this man was acting like his high school daughter's time was indispensable. I also later found out that we aren't really supposed to price match the new model to the discontinued one, so this guy got off saving so much money, yet he still had to break a 19-year-old girl down to tears. I think it's funny that horrible man thought it was okay to make me cry, but if it was his daughter, who isn't so far off in age to me, he probably would have been outraged. Pon was extremely apologetic and clearly embarrassed that his boss acted like that. He even said that if it still didn't come out as even, he would just pay the small tax and not tell horrible man about it. And that was the most emotionally exhausting night of my life at work. Thanks for listening. Entitled Family Takes Food from My Food Pantry. This happened 2 days ago, so I'm still fuming. But one thing you should know is that I run a food pantry on the weekends. We are led by 7 teenagers, one of them being me, who are in charge of 7 different teams that cook, pack, and deliver about 4,000 pounds of food and goods to about 350 needy people every single week. I love running this pantry, and I sacrifice my weekends and social life. I literally haven't hung out with anyone in months, but that's okay, because I want to support my community. Now for the story. It's not going to be in the normal format, because there's barely any dialogue. So our pantry works where each family has a code that describes the zone they're in and the size of their family, and every week we have a new list of codes because things are constantly being rezoned due to families getting jobs and losing jobs all the time. So last Sunday we really messed up and we used the wrong list with the wrong codes, but it wasn't a big deal because I made an announcement over the mic that if any runner, once the meals are made, we give them to teens to go run them and place them in their corresponding boxes. Each family has a box. Had a code that didn't exist to bring it back to me or leave it in a nearby box and the team leaders will come fix it. A lot of people brought back their meals and I relabeled them and apologized that we used the wrong list by accident, and it seemed to be going well until I started fixing the list so we don't use the wrong one again. That's when I realized that I never got the meals for P5 back. P5 was supposed to be T2. My first thought was, oh, maybe they left them in a nearby box and we missed it. So I sent someone to go through every box and check, and they never found it. So then my next thought was, oh, they might have left it in the storage shed. So I go out there and lock eyes with a few teens and their mom, who for some reason panic and run to their car and drive off. Didn't realize it this time, so I'm like, okay then, nice to see you too. I check the storage cart and it's not there. I then check T2 to see if someone else just relabeled it, but it wasn't there. Then it hits me. The teen I gave P5 to just said, "Hey, my box doesn't exist, so instead of going back and getting it relabeled like everyone else, I'm just going to go home with all this food," and just stole a family's worth of food from a food pantry, and I realized that's why the family ran. Luckily, we had enough food to give to T2, but I had to use our extra food, which I always give to family C4, who I know is an unemployed single mother with 6 kids. So because these teens decided they wanted to be cool by stealing food from a food pantry, C4 couldn't get the extra food they usually get. Honestly, I'm just in shock. I knew people did bad things, but I didn't think anyone would stoop so low to steal from a charitable food pantry that gives meals to people that wouldn't otherwise have any. It makes me question why I do it and whether I should continue being a leader in the pantry. I'm trying to give back to the community, and the community steals and does each other over. Edit. My claim of questioning why I'm doing it doesn't just stem from this. I've been seeing that all the volunteers, aside from a few dozen, we have 500 volunteers every week, are just there to get hours for their college app or are there for social media clout. This was just the straw that broke the camel's back, and I'm really not sure why I'm sacrificing a regular teenage life if volunteers don't care and steal. Next we've got Professor dismissed a student for her visual impairment. Student makes sure professor sees the door. This story was told to me by a close friend of mine named Rebecca shortly after our 4th year of college. Rebecca was a very hardworking student who took her education very seriously, with aspirations for medical school. Paired with the fact that we both attended one of the top schools in the country, school life was difficult at best and downright hellish at worst. All this said, Rebecca also had a condition which impacted her vision severely, making it painful for her to see in brightly lit classrooms, diminished her eyesight to only within a few feet away, and left her with complete color blindness. Despite all of this, she was a stellar student, averaging an almost 4.0 GPA due to her amazing attitude and insane work ethic. In general, professors at our school were very accommodating, as our school has an accessibility mandate that we're legally required to enforce, ensuring that students with varying disabilities were adequately accommodated. Failing to do so can result in legal action against the school if the student can provide evidence that their accommodations have been denied. Now, in our second last semester, Rebecca had 5 courses left, 4 of which were bird courses, but the 5th being known to be exceedingly difficult. Vertebrate endocrinology, I think. Needless to say, she took the course as it was a prerequisite for her specialization. All was well until she showed up to the first lecture. In previous years, the class was taught by our fantastic department head who had retired as of that year. Instead, this year's class was taught by a young 30-something associate professor. Associate professor went through their spiel and let the class off early, after which Rebecca went up to give her accommodations, which consisted of printed lecture slides in size 30-point font, high contrast diagrammings for viewing, and an audio recording of the lecture, which she has her own personal recorder for. All other professors had no problems with this and were always willing to accommodate. Associate professor, however, had an ego of sorts, believing that the research they were working on was something of cutting edge in their field, and denied Rebecca's accommodation certificate, stating that providing copies of the lectures to her could open her research to academic theft. She pressed and told her flat out there was no risk of that, as she would sign an NDA or anything if needed, but the associate professor doubled down and told her no. Rebecca thought maybe the associate professor was unaware of how this worked, so she left and came back during office hours with a copy of the accessibility guidelines and her accessibility certificate to show them that she was legally entitled to her requests. Now, important to note, Rebecca is very smart and has dealt with stuff like this before in both her personal life and work life. So, right before she arrived, she hit the little record button on her device she uses for note-taking, to ensure if there was further disagreement, she had more evidence than he said she said. Her intuition was spot on, as the professor lost her crap and told her that, "Unlike you, I can and have read the guidelines," and went on to tell her that if in 4th year, if she couldn't keep up with the material without requiring special exceptions, she didn't belong in her class or at this prestigious institution. Rebecca held her composure and informed them again of the accommodation she was requesting, her ability to sign an NDA if she so chose, and that if they had read the guidelines, they'd understand that what they are doing is illegal and could leave the college at legal liability. The associate professor sputtered.
If you threaten me again, I'll have you expelled from this school.
So, Rebecca apologized and left straight to the accessibility office to lodge a complaint. She sat down with her counselor and recounted what had transpired over her 2 meetings with the associate professor and played the recording for her advisor. She also mentioned that the events had caused her severe duress and she was considering legal action against the school if immediate action was not implemented to remove the barriers to her equitable education. The counselor immediately brought this up to the dean, who brought this to the vice provost, who assembled a tribunal and informed the associate professor they had received a complaint by a student regarding discrimination within the classroom. Tribunal took place at the end of the week with the dean, professor's new department head, vice provost chair, and other members at large representing the panel. Rebecca was sitting in the room during the hearing, quietly, while the associate professor went up to the chair. Associate professor immediately started to lie and tried to spin it that Rebecca was asking for sample midterms and finals because she was struggling with the first week's content. Needless to say, the panel didn't even call Rebecca up to testify. Instead, they played out the recording Rebecca had taken, and after finishing, the associate professor had nothing. Then they screamed that the evidence was illegal, as they had not been given prior consent before the recording had occurred. The chair told them that 1. If you had read the law, you'd know that is not how it works here. And 2. If that is your only defense, the college is firing you for malicious breach of contract, openly admitting to leaving the college open to a human rights lawsuit and abusing their position of authority to bully/intimidate a student. Given our school's reputation, getting fired is lethal to a budding researcher's future career. Associate professor screamed and started swearing at the panel, Rebecca, and anyone else in the room before security escorted her to the office. That was the last time she was allowed in the office of this college or any other as far as I'm aware. As for Rebecca, well, since the class had just lost their professor, they had gotten one of the more senior professors to take on the class for the rest of the semester, and Rebecca did swimmingly. As of date, she's finishing her residency as a dermatologist, and I could not be more proud of her. Next we've got denied my workers' rights. The company lost a lot of money. So for a bit of context you need to know, this company was pretty corrupt, and they ended up getting away with some shady stuff for quite a while before this. It's also worth noting that before working for them, I was training at a martial arts club and loved doing so, despite how tough the training could be. I had every intention of hopefully going pro one day. This is ultimately what fueled my anger. This happened a few years ago. I had been working for this company for a couple months and was finally starting to adjust enough to possibly go back to martial arts training even after working a 12-hour shift. I came in on my scheduled Saturday shift. My normal shift supervisor was away with his wife, who had just given birth. The supervisor who was there usually worked a different shift but was filling in. They assigned me to my usual job, which I later found out from my physiotherapist nobody should be doing for 12 hours straight, especially if they're my size. I'm not a big guy, maybe 140 pounds drenched. Normally, the job wouldn't have caused me any issues. However, that day, I was stuck doing the same job with different material, which was well over the safe legal lifting weight for a single person. Around 3 hours into my shift, I started to experience pain in my back and one of my shoulders. I spoke to the supervisor asking to be moved because of it. They replied, "Sure, I'll see what we have available." They didn't bother looking. I'd like to state that this was a factory job. Something is always available, especially since we constantly found ourselves understaffed. Of course, with the job being my first official job as an adult, I wanted to make a good lasting impression, just as a pillow in case I needed it later in life. Over the course of my shift, I complained twice more and even talked to my coworker that was right across the truckway from me about it. Eventually, she started assisting me with lifting my material, seeing as I wasn't able to do it steadily alone anymore. The pain I was in was intense at the end of my shift. I went home and relaxed before it really hit me hard. I have a high pain tolerance, to the point where I barely notice broken bones. This pain put me in tears and made it extremely difficult to move. I called into work explaining the situation and informing them I wouldn't be in for work the next day, and if the pain didn't start to diminish, I'd be in the hospital instead. I took some over-the-counter muscle relaxers and had mild pain medication before going to bed. I had never slept so badly in my life, consistently waking up in pain and barely being able to move. I ended up being awake when my mom went to work. She worked at the same place. A family friend came over to check on me and we went to the hospital. I wasn't even able to lift my right arm up, so it was straight out at shoulder high. It was just more pain than I could take while keeping enough strength to just barely stay on my feet. The doctor said it was an overuse injury and that I'd be fine in 2 weeks. They wrote a note stating that I was on modified duties for that time period before I'd be fine to go back to my usual job. I took it with a grain of salt, since I was in more pain than I'd ever experienced in my life, but hoped he was correct. It's worth noting that they didn't splint my arm or give me any sort of medication, which possibly caused more work later on. I spent the next 2 days trying to get as much rest as possible, still in a stupid amount of pain. Wednesday rolled around and I went in for work. My normal shift supervisor was happy to see I was all right and apparently had gone off on the other supervisor for letting something like this happen to one of his employees. I was assigned modified duties as the doctor instructed and went to work after being shown what I was doing. Around an hour into my shift, the pain in my shoulder got much worse. My arm started to go purple and I felt pins and needles, constant pain in my joints from my shoulder all the way into my finger knuckles. There was sweeping pain and sharp stabbing pain as well. It got so bad that I started to feel nauseated and my vision was fading in and out. My coworker noticed this and asked if I was all right. I replied no and asked her to get the supervisor for me. I told the supervisor I needed to go back to the hospital and they said I'll have to fill out the incident report sheet. I asked if they'd get it for me and they said they would be back with it ASAP. At this point, it was around 8 a.m. I didn't see the supervisor again until 10 a.m. and they most certainly did not have the papers I needed to fill out, so I asked again. At this point, I was barely holding my composure and again was told they'd get it for me ASAP. My coworker had started to get very worried about me and said that they honestly wouldn't have stayed half as long as I had at that point, but I like to do things properly and wanted to resolve things as quickly as I could, then leave. Over the course of the next hour, I asked multiple times to get this paperwork so I could leave for medical treatment. At 12:30ish, I'd had enough. I was livid and didn't give a crap about my language filter anymore. I spoke to my coworker and told her I was going to the hospital the second my family friend arrived to pick me up, and then pulled out my phone to call them right there. She looked at me and said, "All right, I'll tell the supervisor after you leave, because this is BS." She was angry that I had to sit through this crap, especially for hours. My ride arrived and I went straight to the hospital. The healthcare leave a lot to be desired here. I sat there for, I kid you not, another 5 hours before finally being pulled into a room where I sat for another hour. My mother made it to the hospital before I was even looked at. The doctor finally came in. I'd been in the hospital for over 6 hours at this time. They had me do exactly the same thing as the original doctor did and told me it was simply an overuse injury. I was done. Looking back, I don't know how I managed to not flip my crap at this guy, but I told him to run some sort of test because this was BS and clearly getting worse. The doctor reluctantly agreed to do an ultrasound on my shoulder, and 10 minutes later, wheeling in the machine. Almost the second the screen lit up after placing the ultrasound on my shoulder, he said, "I'm ordering WISB, Workplace Safety Insurance Board, to provide 8 weeks of physiotherapy, the maximum amount of time they can order for WSIB to cover here." I found out from my physiotherapist that I had severe nerve damage, a partial tear in my rotator cuff, and knots in my back preventing blood flow to my shoulder. This crushed me because it meant that not only was it possible I'd never be able to do what I dreamt of doing in life, but if I could, it may become aggravated later on, possibly resulting in a worse injury. I asked if I'd be able to go back to MMA after therapy, and my therapist told me that he didn't know for sure, but depending on how well I recovered, it was still a possibility. Fast forward about a month, I found something out about the supervisors mentioned so far. They both actually tried to comply with my requests, but the owner micromanaged things in a way that made them unable to do it. Until this point, I had considered possibly suing the first supervisor because they didn't comply with my rights as a worker and I was injured as a result. This piece of crap owner had these two under his thumb. He'd been known to fire people for no reason and would make something up to cover his tracks. I started to take some mental notes about things that were not safe in that place, such as just about everything. The major ones were obvious though. They had dangerous chemicals all over, and I mean these chemicals were all over the place. And the chemical room was 1. Not properly isolated, 2. Not stored properly, and 3. Not even ventilated. Furthermore, they had a deaf guy on the forklift. I didn't use this because the guy was a great person and I didn't want to do him over. But at the time, I made a mental note about it and considered. A couple days later, I had another physiotherapy appointment and had to go into work because they had a labor board return to work specialist come in to assess what my modified duties happened to be and what my original had been. We first started with my original job. The owner put a different, far lighter material there and hid the normal material, which was several times heavier. I specifically stated that the material wasn't what I had normally worked with, and even stated the serial number on the material that told you where it was stored. We looked in that direction, and sure enough, it was empty. I sighed, slightly defeated, and we moved on to the modified duties I was doing. The owner stated that I was doing said job, legit counting parts, and each bag only had 500 pieces in it. I knew for a fact that this was BS and called him out on it in front of the man. He grabbed one of the bags already sorted and put it on the scale, thinking he'd be able to pull a fast one on me. Sure enough, it read 500 pieces. I looked at the specialist and told him the bag was already sorted. I then grabbed one that wasn't and placed it on the scale. There was something like 1,200 pieces in it. The owner was clearly not happy about it, and the specialist kind of had a slight grin on his face. I know for a fact that the bags normally had about 1,400 to 1,700 pieces in them. The owner got extremely lucky that it was one of the few bags which didn't, because it was just under the limit for the amount of weight I was allowed to lift on my modified duties. After that, we were done here, and on the way out, I was walking with a specialist since my ride was already there. I said it was too bad the material I usually worked with wasn't in stock. I stated it was usually packed to the brim. He replied it was a bit odd, but he was only there that day. I think he knew things were a bit fishy there. He couldn't do anything without evidence though. He gave me his business card and told me to call him if anything happened or I had any questions. At this point, I was pretty furious that the owner had clearly pulled some shady stuff and from my perspective, attempted to blatantly discredit me. I was honestly done with the place and didn't want to work there. However, I decided to give the benefit of the doubt and wasn't completely bent on destroying them yet. I'm a bit too patient, and honestly, I figured things might work out for the better, but I still kept making mental notes. Oh, that doesn't have a safety. That saw doesn't have the proper gloves, etc. Then my physiotherapy ended. These scumbags on my next shift, right after physiotherapy ended, decided to put me on the job that injured me. The pre-shift room was so quiet, you could have heard a pin drop in the parking lot. I said, all right, but if I experience any pain or discomfort, I expect you to move me. I went to work. Again, the pain started, and I went to my supervisor demanding to be moved. I did this 3 times. They were livid they couldn't fire me. Ultimately, they said, and I quote, "If you can't handle this job, then perhaps it's not the right fit for you. Everyone else here is able to do it." The supervisor most likely was doing what he was told to, because again, if you butt heads with the owner, he doesn't take to it well. So I asked him if I had to fill out any forms regarding it. Sure as heck, I got the forms in less than 2 minutes, signed and left, but I was far from done. I could have let this slide, but they put me on the same job that injured me. I was sure as heck not fully recovered, and I wasn't about to possibly destroy any chance I had of recovering enough to do what I wanted in life, even if it wasn't close to assured. Now, me and my mother made an anonymous call to the regional fire marshal, providing some information that piqued their interest and informed them that the owner liked to hide things during inspections. We also made a call to my father, who was away on business. My father, who was in the military for well over 2 decades, made some calls to friends in high places, and they pulled every military contract the company had. The fire marshal showed up in a surprise fire inspection and noticed very alarming things. He issued a boatload of fines to both the branch and the main company. The fines were in the 7 digits range and had 2 weeks to be paid. The owner had to pay the branch fine himself. They also ordered the branch to shut down until the issues were fixed. I found out 2 months after this that they now have over 30 labor board investigations going on, and their truck for delivery doesn't go out even half as much as it used to. Nobody lost their job over this, but several people I know who worked there moved on to better jobs. Entitled mom and entitled kid at a trampoline park. For a bit of backstory, at the time I was about 10. This was a few years back, but I still remember the events clearly, and also sorry for the length. I was about a month out of a wheelchair from some complications of medications and was trying hard to be my usual self. There was a local kids' indoor play area with a few trampolines, an airbag, I think that's what it's called, and an assault course. At this point, it was just me, my mother, and some other kids playing. It was a bit of a mistake going, but oh well. The cast. We've got me. We've got my mom. We've got the supervisor guy. We've got entitled kid, and we've got entitled mom. Me, literally stepping off the trampoline onto the airbag to avoid pain. Mom, sitting on the benches with a couple of other parents supervising. Disclaimer: any kid, no matter the age, has to be supervised at all times. Entitled mom obviously was not there. One person on airbag at all times for obvious reasons. Not really much dialogue, but anyways. Me, crawling along the airbag to get off. Entitled kid, cannonballs. Me, goes flying and injures myself slightly, meaning not being able to move for a few seconds, then being in pain for a couple more minutes. Goes over to my mom in pain and tell her what happened. I managed to brave it and go again, making sure this kid can't get near me. All is good for the next few minutes and everyone is jumping peacefully, but then re-enter entitled kid. This kid cannonballs onto the airbag, sending one kid hurtling through the air and landing in the gap between the airbag and the netting. This was pretty scary because poor guy was sinking and had to have multiple people pull him out. Entitled kid has no human response to the situation he just caused. By this time, the other parents are getting annoyed and are taking their kids away, but not before entitled kid pulls this trick a few more times. Finally, it's just me and entitled kid, and I stepped off. As I was near the end and think I am in the all clear, entitled kid has to jump again, causing me to smack my legs onto the metal bar covering the side to get out. Cue serious pain. Mom rushes over to come pick me up, as I cannot physically move at this point. My legs and back are in that much pain. Me. Mom, I can't breathe. It hurts too much. Entitled kid, still bouncing around like nothing has ever happened. Mom. Now, my mother is a pretty relaxed person, but this had her angry, but somehow managed to keep some level of cool. Mom, about 8 meters away from this kid and through fencing. Do not ever do that again. You injured my kid and trapped many others. Please read the rules and be respectful. My mother glances over at security guard for reassurance and gets a nod of approval. Entitled kid. This kid who's probably 11 or 12 runs off crying because he just got confronted about his behavior. About 10 minutes pass, an entitled kid comes back up to the trampolines. His family were sitting down the stairs. Mom, are you okay now? Entitled kid.
Yes, I'm sorry.
We thought this was the end of it, as entitled kid was now being respectful and we were all getting along nicely. Mom, do you want a hot chocolate? Me, yes, please. Off we slowly go down the stairs. This took about 5 minutes to 3 flight as we had to take it step by step. As we start walking towards the queue, enter entitled mom. Sorry if I offend anyone, but for context, her eyebrows looked like overweight caterpillars trying to mate. Entitled mom. Are you the woman that screamed at my darling angel's face? Mom. If I am who you are talking about, then I politely told him to follow the safety rules so everyone is happy. Your son just did not know decent respect. How dare you talk about my angel like that? You made him cry. Mom, fuming. My daughter has just come out of a wheelchair, and your son injured her and many other kids, and you were not there supervising him. Entitled mom. I'm gonna get the manager to get you both kicked out. Typical Karen. Mom, let's go and get that hot chocolate I promised you. Mom walks towards the queue. 10-year-old me. How dare you speak to my mother like that? I know, stupid of me, but I just couldn't let this woman win. Entitled mom. Sweetie, your mother was in the wrong by shouting in my darling's face. Me. You and your son are in the wrong because you forgot to teach him basic human decency and believe he can do no wrong when he is just a spoiled brat. How can you live with that? Mom realizes I am going off on one at this woman and respectfully pulls me towards the line. Just realized how long this is, so to cut things short, We are still berating this woman about her eyebrows and stuff like that. But guess who was in front of us in the queue? Entitled Mom's husband/boyfriend. Nice guy didn't say anything apart from look ashamed. I hope he broke up with her and found a decent human being. As for Entitled Mom and Entitled Kid, I saw them walking out about 2 minutes later and me and Mom just burst out laughing. I know the formatting is rubbish, but I cannot be bothered to correct it as it is late and I want to sleep. Sorry if you have managed to read this far, and I hope I get featured on a video. Next we've got Entitled Kid calls Entitled Mom on us for watching PewDiePie. My siblings and I are homeschooled, and we go to a Christian apologetics class every Friday. Since my mom is friends with most of the parents, and my brother is friends with most of the kids in that class, we decided to have them over for lunch on Wednesday. All told, about 12 kids showed up with their parents. The kids, including me, despite being a teen, had the backyard, the den, and the playroom to hang out in, while the adults had the kitchen and the living room. The backyard has a swing, a huge tree, toys, and 2 playhouses. The den has a 42-inch TV that was playing some kid's movie, not to mention several boxes filled with toys. While the den and the living room are downstairs, the playroom is upstairs. The playroom also has a large plasma TV and some toys. The only difference between the playroom and the den was that the kids had set the playroom up like a movie theater. Snacks, drinks, rows of seats, etc., so that they could watch a movie. However, after a while, the younger kids left, leaving the older kids in the playroom. Now, onto the story. After everyone had lunch, I went upstairs to check on the older kids, who I hadn't seen in half an hour. Once I get there, I noticed that they were watching PewDiePie while my little brother battled his Beyblades with 2 of his friends on the other side of the room. I love PewDiePie, and I usually find a quiet time of day to watch his videos so that I'm not interrupted. So watching this video with a bunch of tired kids was ideal. I sat down and all was fine and dandy until the entitled kid showed up. He seemed nice and wasn't much of a hassle before, but seeing us watching PewDiePie triggered something in him. He started demanding that we took PewDiePie off the screen because his mom didn't let him watch that. Now, there were 6 kids, including me, watching PewDiePie, and none of us had cared that he had cursed twice in the 6 minutes of the video that we had watched. But to Entitled Kid, this seemed like a reason to get upset with us. The thing is, Entitled Kid had just walked in. He didn't know what PewDiePie was saying, and he had never heard him curse, but he just didn't want us watching something that he was not allowed to watch. He could have gone to the den, or the backyard, or the living room, or even to the other side of the room, but he decided that he wanted to be there at that exact moment. Not wanting to be bothered by an annoying brat, all of the older kids just ignored him and continued watching the video. Of course, this did not please Entitled Kid, so he climbed onto the TV stand and put his arms out as if to block the TV. Annoyed, I sternly told Entitled Kid to get down because it was dangerous and we were trying to watch. I'm pretty tall and have a permanent mad face, so he immediately did as I said in fear that I would hurt him. I would never do anything like that, but he was still a little intimidated. After about 30 seconds, he grabs a chair, put it in front of the TV, and stood on it. All of the older kids were starting to get pretty mad, so I told him to get down again. He got down, but it was only to climb back onto the TV stand. I had to threaten him with calling the adults at this point, something that I later regretted because that is where he got the brilliant idea of calling Entitled Mom on us. He went downstairs, and about a minute and a half later, he came back with Entitled Mom. Here's how the conversation went, to the best of my recollection. Entitled Mom: "What's going on in here?" Entitled Kid: "They're watching PewDiePie." Older Kid 1: "We're just watching a video." "He's not allowed to watch that. That is an inappropriate video." Pewds was ranking Minecraft mobs. Me: "It's really not." Older Kid 2: "And we told Entitled Kid that he doesn't have to watch it if he doesn't want to." Me: "Yeah, we have a TV downstairs." "No, he should be allowed to be up here.
and he wants to play with his friends.
My brother.
You need to take this off.
Older kids groan and sigh. At this point, I was bewildered that this entitled mom had reasoned that forcing an entire group of kids to stop watching a video so that her son could be where he wanted to be at the time of his choosing, that I turned off the TV and left. I feel bad for leaving the other older kids behind. I thought I could have invited them into my room to finish the video on my computer, but I know entitled kid would just have found his way in there and forced us to take it off. All in all, it was an annoying experience and a win for the entitled moms and entitled kids. Next we've got, he waited in line for this ridiculous flex. I'm an author on a book tour. I'm in a big chain bookstore, sitting at a table with a stack of my books in front of me and beside a 7-foot-tall reproduction of my book cover. I'm chatting with someone while signing their book, and there are 3 people in line behind them. It's my first book, so 3 people in line is huge for me. I'm enjoying the heck out of it, and I'm working my hardest to make sure everyone is having a great time. And they mostly are. Mostly. I start to pick up an impatient vibe from the man at the end of the line. He's kind of huffy, looking around a lot, and keeps trying to make eye contact with me as I'm writing a somewhat lengthy dedication for the person at the front. The front person asks if we can take a photo together. I say of course, because I am so not used to anyone wanting to take a picture with me, and I'm totally an attention hog. This really sets Grumpy Man off.
Really?
He barks. I'm trying my best to not be mad at Grumpy Man because he's in a line to buy my book. Maybe he's had an awful day. Maybe he's late for dinner. Maybe his parking meter ran out 5 minutes ago and he has so many parking tickets that they'll tow his car. Who knows? So I ask the other people in line if it's okay for this gentleman to jump ahead since he seems to be pressed for time, and everyone is cool with it. I motion for him to come on up. He plops a bag down on the signing table, pulls out 3 copies of Geddy Lee's Big Book of Bass, and says,
I need to return these.
Oh no. I put on my best apologetic smile. I'm so sorry for the confusion, I say, gesturing at my stack of books and the giant sign beside me. I'm the author of this book, and I'm here to sign copies of it today.
Do I look like I care? I need to return these,
he shouts. For sure, I get that, I say. I just don't know how I can help you. I don't work here. I'm just visiting this store to sign my book. I point towards the cash desk about 20 feet away and say, I'm sure that the awesome people who work at this store will be happy to help you.
I stood in this line. I need you to help me,
he snaps. I'm pretty convinced that he's not listening to me. I'm so sorry about that confusion. It makes sense. There was a line of people. You figured it was a line for the cash, and you stood in it. But it turns out it was a line to get my autograph. The good news is that there's no line at the cash. I point again towards the actual cash. The other people in line are having a great time watching this show, and a few people have come creeping over from the coffee shop attached to the bookstore to get a better view.
Cut out this author bullcrap,
shouts Grumpy Man,
and get me your manager.
I stand up very slowly. I pick up a copy of my book from the stack and flip to the About the Author page. I hold it up beside my face and make the same smirking grin that I'm wearing in the headshot printed in the book. This visual aid seems to have worked because Grumpy Man grabbed his 3 copies of Geddy Lee's Big Book of Bass and Kid and stomped his way over to the actual cash. Postscript. I wrote,
cut out this author bullcrap and get me your manager,
below my signature for the people who witnessed this absurd event. Next we've got, for the second time this month, I'm mistaken for a hotel employee. I work in a large office complex that is attached to a large hotel. As I was going on my daily walk to get away from my small office, I walked through the hotel lobby. I had my headphones on. As I passed the registration desk, a woman stops me and asks for help with her luggage. I pulled out a headphone and nicely pointed her to the desk. Me. Yes, ma'am. You can ask one of them to help you.
Karen. I'm in a rush, and seeing as you're not helping anyone else, you can help me.
She flings her suitcase handle in my direction somewhat roughly, and I don't grab a hold, so it falls to the floor. It's a hotel lobby, so it's loud. Karen.
Are you crazy?
Me. No, ma'am. And I also don't work here. At that point, an employee, dressed in a hotel business uniform, slacks, Oxford, blazer, and hotel name, versus I, who am dressed in a dress and heels with a different company employee badge hanging off my belt, jogs up to us to see what's going on. Karen.
Your employee refused to help me and threw my luggage down to the ground.
Worker, not a manager. Ma'am, this lady doesn't work here, but I'd be happy to help you with your luggage. I start to walk off because even though I'm upset, I know the situation is handled. But no. Karen raises her voice loudly about how she has never been treated this way and expects more from this hotel. And she's a rewards member with a zillion points or whatever. I hear her screeches fade away as I'm walking away from the lobby into the next tower. I honestly don't know what made Karen think I worked there. There were dozens of people in that lobby. On my way back through the lobby to head back to my office, the employee with her manager spotted me and apologized for the scene. They asked me if I was a guest, and I told them I worked in the attached office complex. They offered me a gift certificate, good for a lunch at their hotel restaurant, but I thanked them and refused. My last mistaken career identity event last month earned me an entire comped weekend, and I didn't want to be greedy. Next we've got, sit around with no job for 3 years and cause me to lose my home? Enjoy thousands of dollars of debt and losing your home. My ex of 7 years for the last 3 years we were together refused to get a job. I covered everything for us during the time, paying for my home and his home, and was slowly losing the race. I also paid for everything we did extra for 7 years together because he always managed to be broke. Anytime I asked him to get a job and help out, he had a meltdown. About 6 months before we broke up, I realized he was a total financial user and mooch. Because of this, I lost about $450,000 in the 7 years I was with him and my home to foreclosure, paying for everything on 2 homes. I also realized he was a borderline personality, bad temper, totally irrational, thinks it's everyone else's fault, no ownership, gaslighting was the worst, etc. So I set up my revenge. He was totally driven by money, mainly status, but really just didn't want to work. He was also incredibly selfish. Whenever I ended up in the ER with migraines, he was nowhere to be found, leaving me nasty messages as to why it was taking so much time to get treated and that he wasn't going to pick me up because he didn't like hospitals. Basically, he was a self-centered, nasty human being. Now the revenge. I came across a company on Craigslist that says they could eliminate a mortgage through some weird legal loophole. I knew it was BS, but they were attorneys that made them look legit. I knew this was the perfect revenge. I told him about the company and that he could buy a new house, and this company would help him get the mortgage released on that and his existing home. He would have a new house and no mortgage on it either. Then he could sell them and make a bunch of money. He bought it hook, line, and sinker. He goes and buys a huge brand new house in Tahoe. Remember the subprime days, stated income? You just needed a good FICO. He had it. Then he runs up all these credit cards furnishing it, about $70,000. Then he books a cruise for our anniversary to Europe. Soon after I found out I had to work for a new job, so I couldn't go, and he informs me, well, I'm still going. So I have to stay home and pay for everything while he goes. Nice, eh? I knew it was time to bail out, and he would do the bailing for me. Sure enough, he fools around on the cruise and cheats on me. Who cares? He comes back leaving his open email on my computer with all these emails spelling out the cheating with some guy on the cruise and how he can't be himself around me. I confront him and he says he wants to break up. I tell him, great, and I move out in 2 weeks. But first, he has me sign some bogus agreement to pay for him on the debt on the credit cards. I tell him, good luck with that. Credit cards are all in his name. He threatens to take me to court I tell him, go for it. I never hear from him again. I leave him with 2 massive mortgages on 2 homes and $70,000 in credit card debt. Basically, I give him back the financial stress he put me through. He has to foreclose on both homes and magically gets a job soon after. Some 15 years later, he is like 400 pounds, alone, and scamming the state of California out of disability payments. Years later, I am in a loving marriage to a great guy. Our home is paid off and we travel the world. Still can't believe I was so stupid to be with someone so incredibly selfish. That experience made me look for someone who was deeply empathetic, loving, kind, and most of all, a contributor to our relationship, not a taker. How dare you charge tax? I'm calling corporate. A little background. I work at McDonald's. I've been working there for almost a year, and apparently I'm good at drive-thru. At least that's where the managers like to put me every day. Also, I live in the United States of America, where the tax isn't a part of the price, but it's added afterwards. This happened a few hours ago. Now to the story. I was working drive-thru and a man pulled up in his truck. Here's the conversation. We've got entitled dad, we've got me, and we've got the manager. Me. Welcome to McDonald's. How may we serve you? Entitled dad. His words were slurring. I couldn't understand him that well, so this is what he ordered. A hamburger, a Happy Meal, and a 6-piece nuggets. This will be important later. The total without tax was $8.88. Me. Okay, is there anything else you'd like? No. Me. Okay, your total is $9. I can't remember the change. This is when he gets mad, and I couldn't understand much of what he said. But it was something along the lines of, "What are you charging me extra for?" Sir, I'm not charging you extra for anything. I just have the Happy Meal and the 6 nuggets. But it was $8 and something. Now it's $9. Me. Yes, without tax it's $8.88, but the tax is 72 cents. So now it's 9 something. This went back and forth for a few minutes, with me trying to explain to him that the extra charge is the tax and him not taking my explanation until finally I just gave up and ignored him, letting him ramble on about how he's not going to let me steal $1 from him, or something like that, while I cashed out other customers. I know I probably shouldn't have done this, but I was angry and tired. Finally, I started talking to him, and this is the conversation. Entitled Dad. I want to speak to the manager. Me. Okay, you can speak to them at the first window. So he drives forward, and I take other people's orders. Finally, I get to the last car before jerk. I cash that person out and go to one of the managers. Me. I'm gonna need a manager. Manager. What's the problem? Me. I'm by the window, so I don't want this person to hear me say, "This jerk doesn't know how tax works." I really don't know. I open the window. Hello, you ordered a Happy Meal and 6-piece nuggets? Entitled Dad. Yeah, and I want to know what you're charging me extra for. Me. Sir, I'm not charging you extra for anything. I have the Happy Meal and the nuggets. It's the tax that the computer automatically puts in. But it was 8 something. At this point, I had another car at the drive-thru, so I let the manager handle. The manager basically had the same conversation that I did with the man. She even showed him the computer screen so that he could see how it was the tax. It finally ended with him paying for his food and yelling that he was going to call corporate. For those who don't know, each McDonald's is independently owned. That's why the prices will vary from place to place. And if you have a complaint with a particular McDonald's, you call the franchise owner, not corporate. Side note, I suppose it's possible that this person was from another country and wasn't used to the system, but I personally don't think that excuses his behavior. Next we've got, you can't suspend my kid. I worked in a daycare for 5 years. I managed one for 4 out of the 5. I was 18 years old when I first got into the management role. I was bright-eyed and chipper and ready to change the world, one aftercare program at a time. Our cast. We've got me, the naive daycare manager. We've got entitled mom. We've got kid, her kid who I don't blame due to the mother. And we've got entitled dad, and the panic attack I had after the situation. So my time during the daycare, there was this little kid. I say little, but he was 11, that constantly didn't listen. I'm talking full-fledged, would do things he knew he shouldn't. Didn't matter how many times I talked to him. Didn't matter what I did. Nothing ever worked. I tried working with this mom multiple times. It got to the point where my boss was just like, all right, they can't come back for the rest of the week. And then he'd push me in the room with them to drop the bomb. The mom and dad always had excuses for him. So in this particular issue, the kid ran away from his group, which I mean isn't that bad. The kicker is he hid in a secluded part of our building and played Angry Birds on his phone until I finally found him because he screamed. When asked why he left the area he was supposed to be in, he told me, I just didn't feel like listening. I don't have to. My parents told me they don't like you, so I don't like you either. I wasn't surprised, and I was fine with this comment. I was not the biggest fan of them either. I, of course, had communication with my boss the whole time during this situation, and he had communication with the parents on what was going on. She told them we would have the consequence and paperwork ready when they came to pick the kids up. This is where the fun begins. Please keep in mind, this isn't word for word, but you get it. Entitled mom storms into the room.
I know where this is going. He isn't suspended. This is clearly your guy's fault.
Me. Actually, he indefinitely is for the next 3 days. The kid's sister is welcome to come back during these 3 days, but your son is unfortunately not able to join us. I try to go into why and explain the safety issue and how we need him to understand that he has to stay with the group, but she was not having it. She screamed and at one point slammed her hand on the table. The son at one point looks at me and says, I told you she didn't like you. And the mom said,
That's true. This is why.
After blaming the group teacher for him running away, even after telling her what she said, she storms out of the building with her kids, and I think the situation is over. Wrong. It's about 30 minutes until closing when I get a call to the front where the kids get picked up. I walk up there and see Entitled Dad standing there, brooding in the lobby. Confused and bracing myself for more drama, I ask him how I can help him today. Entitled Dad.
Do you realize that you're suspending a Marine, son? Why don't you take better care of my kid? Maybe if you did, he wouldn't be making bad choices.
Me. Sir, I'm sorry that this happened, but we have a parent and code of conduct handbook that both you and your student signed acknowledging the rules. The conversation continued, and as it continued, he got more and more mad. He began yelling, and my front desk attendant got nervous, bless her heart, and she immediately started texting the owner who had left for the day. I pulled the dad into the office because other parents were coming in. It was see-through, so my attendant had visuals on me and him, and he got really close to my face. Entitled Dad.
I'm a Marine. You're not going to suspend my son, and he will be here tomorrow.
Me. Thank you for your service. I can't imagine the dedication to this country you have. However, that doesn't change the outcome of what happens today. Entitled Dad. This is word for word because I was 100% shocked.
I'm going to kick your butt. I'm tired of you acting like a smug little jerk because my son doesn't follow the rules.
At this point, Entitled Dad is all up in my face. I laugh when I'm uncomfortable, so I was chuckling a lot. But other than that, I think I held myself well. But homie was jacked. The more he screamed, the harder it was for me not to laugh. So he continues to scream, and finally, I just look at him and said I was about to call the police and that he can either leave now or in handcuffs. He gave me a whole rant about how he's a Marine and millennials are BS people who don't care about vets, even though my whole family is vets. And then my boss walked in and took over. I left the room and had to sit down in the office for a bit. I held myself composed out there, but I didn't realize how shaken up I was until after this dude was not my issue anymore. My attendant told me I was tough, and she was really impressed. I felt like a punk. Long story short, kid was suspended, and he still would act up after that day. Parents literally started telling him they didn't care if he didn't listen in daycare, so long as he listened in school. Apparently, by the stories he'd tell, he didn't do that either. He would tell me he didn't like me, but it got to the point where I just counted down the days before he was too old to be in the program anymore. His sister was an angel, so I knew when he left it wouldn't be an issue anymore. Don't work daycare, ladies and gents. I have plenty of these. Edit. I'm not sure if the homeboy was an actual Marine. Like I said, I didn't like them, like at all, so I didn't really work towards getting to know them like I did with the other parents. I'm not the type to make a fuss, like calling the CEO though, as I get nervous unless someone really upsets me. I just think it's cool to finally be able to tell my stories. Next we've got, appears I meet the requirements. Welcome to Boxmart. I'm the guy in black scrubs and a lanyard attached to a badge with "Not this place" clearly named. Never mind, I'm with my wife and kids. Twice I wander off to grab something we skipped or forgot. Twice, randoms ask me where to find things. Frozen veggies, frozen seafood section, both oddly placed in my opinion. Both times, I'm not too sure, I don't work here, and I try to avoid this place. Sorry, and on we go. Now I'm reaching atop the high shelf to get a meal replacement drink because I often need to not feel hunger pain while not having time to properly handle it. I'm reading the label and chatting with wifey about it. Spidey sense fails me. Wife looks up behind me a couple times and I don't register that I've applied for a new job. She tugs my sleeve and clears a path for Karen, saying, "Scooch over, babe, I think she needs in." And I move while turning and saying, "Sorry, lost in the label." My application has been accepted. I'm hired and I start my new position 15 seconds ago. I receive a verbal warning for conduct immediately.
When you're done messing around, I need you to show me where a relevant item is. Your useless kids just point and send me the wrong way.
Took about 10 full seconds of blinking, thinking, and checking my outfit to realize all you need is a lanyard of any kind to get a job here. Coincidentally, it takes the same amount of time for a wild Karen to ignore all the signs present and become enraged at not having their demands met with groveling.
Are you useless too? Let's go. I need a relevant item today.
I give wifey a good solid kiss. She blinks and stares confused. Be back in a sec, beautiful. Be good for mommy, buddy. Kiddo doesn't think much, but wifey catches on. Really? Okay then, have fun. I check my badge again, just to see if the ignition kicks on for Karen. Appears to run on steam, and the coal fire is heating up. I'm pretty new, but we'll find it. Right this way, ma'am. She made it down 4 aisles that most definitely wouldn't have what she wanted before mentioning my incompetence.
I can't see why they'd have you in charge.
I can't help but agree. I'm right there with you, ma'am. Seems like a major oversight. She follows through pet food, by the fish, and through shoes, but draws the line at electronics.
I'm looking for a relevant food item. Why would you take me here? There's no food back here at all.
It's been fun, but I'm bored, and she's either gonna get the point shortly or never. Yeah, you're probably right. Maybe we should get someone that works here. Should we try at the register? They can probably call a manager from there. Looks like the at-will employment in my state kicked in. She walked off towards the food, and I haven't received next week's schedule. I'm not hurt though. The pay was terrible. Next we've got, from targeting me to my boss being escorted out by security. I was one of 2 commercial writer/producers working in the production department of a local television station. Our department was responsible for producing both the newscasts and commercials for clients who purchased airtime on our station. The department is high stress. I had to manage multiple deadlines and provide creatives for about a dozen ad campaigns every month. That being said, I always met my deadlines and our sales department was always complimentary of my work, steering the more important clients my way. Unfortunately, managers in my department came and went with unsettling frequency. In the 9 years I was there, I had 6 different managers. Most often, the managers were passing through with their sights set on snagging upper-level management jobs in larger television markets. This meant their experience actually doing the work of television production was often minimal, so they had a tendency to not interfere with our work so long as our clients were happy and deadlines were being met. Given the managers were so disengaged, I told our general sales manager about my idea for saving time and money in the department, and he suggested I apply for the production manager position the next time it opened up. So I did. I did not get the job. I was told I was too important maintaining good client relationships through my work as a producer. No big deal, I thought. I was happy as a producer. Unfortunately, the person they did hire for the position ended up being a monumental jerk of the first order. I'll call him Bob. The first thing Bob wanted to know was who in the department had applied for the position he now filled. I don't know what idiot in upper management thought it would be a good idea to tell him, but someone did. It soon became apparent he wanted to find any excuse he could to fire me, because that was just the kind of insecure idiot he was. It began by him writing me about the time I was taking to complete commercial productions. Then he accused me of undercharging clients in my billing. He wanted me to wear a suit and tie, which he knew I hated. As the writing on the wall became clear, I began documenting every single interaction with him, taking notes about what was said and contradicting his accusations with the facts. All the while, he is managing to upset a whole lot of people in our department, and morale really began to tank. Bob was petty, vain, and given to things like announcing how lavish and wonderful a vacation he was planning would be. He was going to Aruba, so he had put up travel posters and printed out a ridiculous sign he taped to his office door that would say something like, "My island adventure begins in 2 weeks." All this served to remind us that he was the only one in our department who made enough money to take that kind of vacation. Eventually, an incident occurred where I missed a deadline through no faults of my own. The client wanted to change up the creatives at the last minute, and we had to bump the film shoot. Somehow, Bob got in his head that I should have been a mind reader and anticipated the client's wishes before they were communicated. He calls me into his office and begins berating and threatening me. I had had enough. I'm the kind of person who will take a lot of crap with patience and grace, but when I am finally pushed to my boiling point, I explode. I start yelling back, "You're a liar, and if you think I don't know how to handle this client, then fine. Let me see you do it, because I'm out of here." And I walked off the job. I'm so amped up by what just transpired after leaving the office, I walk all the way home, a distance of more than 6 miles. Just as I am nearing my house, my cell phone rings. It's Bob. Evidently, it just dawned on him that he would, in fact, have to produce the ad campaign himself, because our other producer had the week off. He hemmed and hawed and finally blurted out something that was quite revealing. "If we lose this client, we'll both get fired, and I can't afford to lose another job." Really? So you've been fired from all your other jobs? What a surprise. I tell him to go forget himself, because I'm not taking his crap for one more minute. All the while, I'm literally trembling with the knowledge I've walked off the job without another job to go to, and I have a wife and 2 kids to support. Thankfully, the next call I get is from the general sales manager. You know, the guy who recommended I apply for Bob's job, resulting in this whole crap storm? By now, news of my blow-up evidently made it back to him. He asks me about what happened, and I fill him in and apologize for walking off the job while also telling him there's no way I'm working for Bob. He says, "Yup, leaving work wasn't a good idea, so do me a favor and come back. Email me the details of what happened and I'll see what I can do." Thanks to my copious note-taking of all interactions with Bob, it takes me no time at all to send him the complete history of Bob's foolishness. So I return, hoping to avoid Bob. Thankfully, his door was closed, and I keep my head down in my cubicle. A half hour before quitting time, I notice our general manager and security guard getting off the elevator together. I stand up to see where they are headed and am elated to see it is directly towards Bob's office. What transpires is even better than the revenge options I was contemplating. Bob emerges from his office carrying a box of his belongings, including the rolled up Aruba travel poster, and is escorted by the security guard to the escalator. Now, standing up in my cubicle, he turns towards me, his face beet red with embarrassment. As our eyes meet, I flash an ear-to-ear grin. The jerk is done. Next we've got taking my notes? Guess who won't graduate high school? So this happened in 2018 when I graduated high school. A quick overview of the Swiss school system. Normally, you go to school until ninth grade. If you want to go to university later, you change to grammar, high school, from 8th to 12th grade. I decided to study and went to high school. Also in Switzerland, my state at least, everything under 75% is a fail. We have a really strict thing going on there. There, I quickly became friends with Chelsea, my now girlfriend, and Alicia. Alicia is the kind of person that is funny if you don't have her around too much. She is always the victim. She can only talk about herself, etc. But if you spend too much time with her, you are a mess. She is also never responsible for things happening to her because she grew up in the foster care system. Whatever. So, this happened about 2 months before our finals. Now, graduating means passing the finals obviously, but not only them. The finals are half of your eventual grade. The other half is your last report card. If I had an A in my final English exam, but a C in my last report card, my eventual grade would be a B, and so on. Alicia really struggled with that because her last report card wasn't that good. She had to excel in most of the subjects to graduate. So you would think she'd write as many notes as possible and study pretty early, right? Nope. She procrastinated until 2 months before our finals while I and Chelsea studied our butts off. Now, I always was the girl who offered her notes in our class group chat in case someone was interested. This gets important later. We had a fairly long list of things we had to be able to use in math, and I wrote notes for every single topic and kept it in a folder in my locker. Only put some of them on the group chat, just when someone was asking about a certain topic. One day, I went to my locker and they weren't there. I was freaking out. I spent weeks on writing them. I looked for them for an entire week and had approximately 3 panic attacks because I thought I wouldn't pass now and had to do all of it again. That's when Alicia casually told me that she took them the other day when I asked her to get a book from my locker. She actually hadn't planned to tell me at all because
It's not like you'd need them anyway. You had them long enough. If you didn't make copies, it's not my fault.
the blatant entitlement was enough for me to come up with a plan. A vicious plan. Not only had she stolen my notes, if I hadn't bothered her so much with it, she wouldn't have even told me she had taken them. She was only a high school friend anyway, and I knew I'd never do anything with her again once we graduated. So frankly, I didn't give a single crap about what would happen to her. Her entitled, self-centered way was enough for me to finally burst. I apologized for making drama. It's okay, you just are like that sometimes. I was about to lose it, and just continued my school day. Now, Alicia kept calling me about notes, etc., even before that, especially my notes for various books. She had chosen the same books, so she didn't have to study extra. I started to give her a wrong analysis and started to fake notes. Obvious enough to figure out they were wrong if she'd think herself, but not too obvious. If she had read the books, she'd know it's BS. I did the same with our English books and French. She had already had my math notes, so I couldn't fake those, but I could fake German, French, English, chemistry, physics, and psychology. Now, after I invested so much time in faking notes, I watched it all go down a day before graduation. We went into a pub with our teacher to watch a football game I don't even remember, and she distributed our results. I passed with a 5.38. In Switzerland, the grades are from 1 to 6. 6 is the best, so about an A. And Alicia went pale, 3.21, D-. She had failed all of her classes but math and psychology. Oops, it seems she really just read my notes. She didn't read the books she was supposed to read. She didn't read our textbooks. I had to hide a grin. My girlfriend thinks to this day it was cruel, but seriously, it was a damper for her entitlement and narcissism. From what I've heard, she is currently trying to repeat the year and try again, hopefully without stealing her friend's notes. Edit. Many are asking me, and no, I don't regret it. To pass her finals, she had to study and read her French, German, and English books. The task was not to just read the notes and BS her way through them. The language finals, the books at least, were done verbally. If she had read the books, she would have known my notes were not correct. So honestly, her fault. Entitled mom demands pizza for her kids after school says no. Hello, lovely people. I have a story for you to enjoy. I used to be a pizza delivery driver for, let's call them Father Jonathans. I did this for nearly an entire year, and oh boy, were there some fun people you run into. Now, the subject of our story today is a very, very entitled mother who has a very interesting claim to the random pizza girl. Shall we begin? Our cast. We've got entitled mom. We've got school lady. We've got me. We've got the manager. Disclaimer, it's been a while since this happened, so details aren't completely word for word. Story. So it's Valentine's Day, and we have a special on a heart-shaped pizza. I get an order for a school nearby. Cool, right? Except it's not. The total was $0, meaning that it's a remake. But I had been there since opening and hadn't seen that order come through before. So I asked my manager, who was working that day. Manager. Oh yeah, it's for some lady who said it was never delivered. I just shrug and go about my day. Make the pizza, cut the brownie, cut the other pizza, bag it up, clock it out, put it in my car, and leave. Knowing full well I'm not getting a single tip on this one, but at least it's close and I can wash my hands of the situation. I get to the school and park. I hated to deliver there because the office was up a huge flight of stairs and carrying a huge pizza bag was not fun. I get up to the desk and give the name on the receipt to the school lady. It's for a student. Great. So I'm going to have to wait for this kid. But here is where it gets good. School lady. I think that's a student here. Me. Oh, okay. I can wait. School lady. Does a typey thing on the computer and her face gets confused. Actually, that's not a student. Can you call the number? So I go ahead and call the number. Here is where our woman of the hour enters. Entitled Mom. Hello? Me. Yes, ma'am. This is your father Jonathan's pizza delivery driver. I'm just calling to make sure I have the address right.
Well, you are at the school, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Well, quit wasting my time. Just give it to my son. He should be at the school.
School lady starts to shake her head, no. School lady. No, the students aren't allowed deliveries from outside the school. She can't do that. Me to the entitled mom. I'm sorry, ma'am, but the school is saying I am not able to make the delivery because they don't allow outside deliveries. Entitled mom.
Well, how else am I supposed to feed my triplets?
This is at a high school. Me. I'm sorry, ma'am, but
so what? You're just going to let my babies starve?
Ma'am, I am so sorry, but I have to follow school policy.
You know you guys did this yesterday too, and they went without lunch then too. It's your fault if they don't eat again today.
Me and school lady are just kind of shocked. My fault her triplets aren't being fed? Me. I'm sorry, ma'am, but I cannot go against the school's policy.
No, it's your fault. My babies are going to starve for the second day in a row because you idiots can't just deliver a pizza to them.
Me. I apologize, ma'am, but you are just going to have to call the store and speak to my manager. This is out of my hands. Entitled mom hangs up and the poor desk lady just shakes her head. School lady. She did that yesterday too. And even if we didn't have that rule, the boys left with their friends. The friends had spotted them lunch even before the pizza got there. So I just took the pizzas back to the store. I had to look at the receipt to how much she had originally paid for 2 pizzas and a brownie. She paid $42. $42 for 2 pizzas and a brownie? Lady, go to Walmart and get stuff for PB&J for like under $10. My fault. Her probably really nice kids didn't eat that day. Okay, Karen. My manager only laughed and rolled her eyes. She said we could just eat the pizza if she never came to get them. Well, I enjoyed every slice of it. So somewhere out there are 3 boys that I starved because I couldn't deliver a pizza. Sorry, guys. Edit. If the kids had ordered the pizza, it would have been allowed. But as a safety precaution, no deliveries were allowed from anyone outside the school. Not even flowers or balloons or anything like that. The school was just doing their job to keep the kids safe. You never know who is sending it. If it is a parent who isn't supposed to have contact, someone with bad intentions, you just never know. Next we've got, you should have just let him see your dog. So, you guys asked me to post more of my stories, and the more I thought about the bad ones, this is the one that came to the top of my list. This is the story of what ultimately made me leave the daycare I was working at in the previous story. My wife and I lived in an apartment for a few years due to us saving for a house. We lived in a cheaper apartment, so we could really sock away money to put toward a house we both liked. Well, I was in my last semester of college, and I was still working at the daycare I mentioned in my last story. There was a kid that went to the daycare that stayed in my apartment complex. This boy would always show up at our door. So, our cast. We've got me, just trying to watch Netflix and drink my sweet tea. We've got my beautiful wife. We've got the kid who can't take a hint, and we've got the entitled mother. So the kid showed up periodically to see if I would play with him and his siblings. I literally never did, because I figured if I did it one time, then he would expect it daily. So I started saying no. And then it got to the point where my wife would answer and say I wasn't home. He found out which car was mine, so he stayed away until he saw me walking my new dog. At the time, one day, he asked if he can pet it, and I said yes. Then the unwanted visitations escalated. Kid: "Hey, Mr. Ghetto Duck, let me see your puppy." Me: "Hey, buddy, I've had a long day. I gotta go. Maybe some other time." Well, that worked for a while, until one Saturday in particular, he comes knocking at my door. I go to answer it, and my dog was in the bedroom with my wife, and they were napping. He asked if he could see the dog, and I said no, and that everyone but me was sleeping. This boy rolled his eyes and said, "Nah, I'm tired of not being able to see your dog." He ran into my apartment and ran straight for the bedroom. He wakes my wife up, screaming, saying, "Where's the dog?" I was in shock. This boy had really run into my apartment. So my wife is trying to cover herself with a blanket. My dog is losing his mind, and the kid is trying to pet the dog. Well, the dog snapped at him. The kid took his shoe off and then threw it at my dog. So at this point, I'm realizing what is happening. So I walk over to the kid and pick him up like a baby in a cradle and walk him to the patio. I told him this wasn't okay and that he needs to stay away from my apartment. Well, cue his mom stomping up the stairs.
Oh, heck no,
is the only thing I hear before this lady comes up and gets directly in my face. She lets me explain nothing, just keeps screaming how I will not talk to her kid like that, and she's going to tell the daycare and get me fired. When I finally got a chance to talk and explain what happened, this lady looked me dead in the eye and said,
"Why didn't you just let him see the dog? This is so stupid."
She then opens my apartment door and yells for my wife to bring out the stupid dog. Her son ran back in, and this time my wife was ready, and she picked him up and put him on the porch. I told her to lock the door, and I stood out on the patio getting chewed out. My wife then called the police because it was getting out of hand. While I was trying to get this lady to get off my patio and take her kid with her, the cops showed up.
"He wouldn't let my kid see his dog. He had to do something to see the dog, so he ran in."
I told the officer I didn't want to press charges because it didn't really make sense and the kid was just being dumb. He was probably 8, if I remember correctly, and that was too much. Well, the mom called the daycare right after and threw a fit, and I got called into a meeting with her and the kid. The mom fabricated this whole story, how I said I was going to show him my dog, and that I was breaking the promise, and the kid got upset. When I got asked about my side, I just looked at the kid. "Did I ever promise you that?" Kid: "No." The mom got so mad at the kid. She then claimed he had emotional trauma from the situation and asked for a month of free tuition. She didn't get it. After that day, I told my boss that I'm putting in my 2 weeks notice and he would need to start training my assistant manager to take over. Next we've got customer demands discount claiming our product is not made of real material. I work at a store that sells mid to high-end leather products, bags, wallets, gloves, etc. This happened today and is told to the best of my recollection. A customer is browsing, picks up a pair of gloves, walks over to me and asks,
"Is this real leather?"
Me: "Yes, it is. Full grain calf skin." Him:
"No, it isn't. I can tell by the feel."
He holds the gloves out to me, mentioning me to feel them. I rub them in my hands and I repeat, "It is real leather."
Him: "No, it isn't. If it was real leather, then it'd be worth the price,
$115.
Since it's not, give me a discount."
His whole demeanor gave off this vibe as if he expected me to simply agree. I stand there with a perplexed look on my face and decline his request. Him.
You know the store, coach. They have one just like this, but it's cheaper and real leather too. It's stiff and stronger than these.
My store gloves.
I don't like these, especially for driving, because the steering wheel rubs them, then they become sticky.
I'm even more baffled now, and I mutter out an, okay? We both just look at each other for a second. Him.
But what would you know? You're just a worker.
Me, now completely dumbfounded. Yeah, you're right, I am. More silence. We stare at each other. He shrugs his shoulders, puts the gloves back, and walks out. More silence. We stare at each other. He shrugs his shoulders, puts the gloves back, and walks out. I brush off the encounter and didn't give it much afterthought, but now as I lay here in bed, it's keeping me up. People are bizarre. Next we've got Lady loses it over $5 and some change. Today it was my manager, another regular associate, and I. This lady comes in to make a return, then buy other things. She was in there an hour and had us pulling different sizes of things often. We finally get her to the register, and my coworker is ringing her up while I attend to other things. Our system is saying we have to put the return on a gift card or her credit card. The associate explains this to the customer, and she's okay with the gift card, so we can just turn around and use the funds instead of pulling more from her card, it being reimbursed after a week, etc. When they get to the new purchase, it turns out Lady's new stuff in total cost $5 and some change less. So she has a gift card with that amount and gets mad.
Okay, can you make that cash? I don't want a gift card.
Associate. Well, I can't do that, and I'm not sure there's a way. Are you sure you don't want to just keep the card? Because it's only $5-ish, and you will be back.
No, I want the cash. You didn't say I would end up with a gift card.
Well, I didn't know there would be a difference in price. Goes and gets manager, tells her what's up. Manager. I don't know how. I'll have to call. Manager is trying to get some people on the phone, figure it out, but can't. Lady is getting visibly upset and just asks if she can take the cash and leave because she has to leave or she'll be late for something. Manager, of course, says no because of procedure. Lady.
Okay, I want to just cancel the whole order. This is ridiculous. I mean, why can't you just give me the cash? I don't understand why it's taking this long.
Manager. Because we can't just do that. We need you to sign things to make sure it's canceled. Can't just let you walk out with money unaccounted for. I'll have to call the customer service number to cancel it from their end. Do the refund reversal.
Whatever. Just do what takes the least amount of time. I'm late.
Me and associate call. Tell the guy what's happening, and it's taking a while. By this time, I've been ringing customers and walking around helping. I get back to my register, and it starts giving me issues with another lady's stuff. All of a sudden, screaming.
I'm so tired of this. It's taking too long, and you can just take this gift card and shove it. I want my money now, and I don't care what you have to do. I'm so late, and I want my refund.
Manager and associate just look at her and keep talking to the guy on the phone and get some progress. I call associate over to help me with my computer issue, and the lady starts getting a little testy over the coupons and system not working. I do commend her for staying calm ultimately and letting us just do our job. Manager finally gets off the phone and gives lady her credit on her credit card. And lady.
Thank you so much for your help. Have a nice day.
Magically, lady wasn't in a rush anymore and walked out at a leisurely pace. Next we've got Karen at Target. I got off work for my grocery store job. My uniform, this is important to the story, was a khaki-colored polo shirt, black pants, and a navy blue apron. I had flipped my apron down, but still had it tied around my waist because it had pockets and I loathe handbags, and my shirt was untucked. I was exhausted and probably looked like a big slob. On the way home, I remembered that I had run out of shampoo that morning and I decided to stop by Target. I picked up a handheld basket by the door, got my shampoo, and decided that, since I'm already here, I was going to pick up a couple of things for dinner. Our store had a food section. I'm browsing and reading labels when another customer comes into the aisle and hovers near me. I shift aside, thinking I'm in her way. I put down the item I was holding and picked up another choice when she barks.
Excuse me?
I looked over, ready to apologize for being in front of the item she's after, and prepare to move aside again. I didn't even get a chance to speak.
Do you know where the irons are?
No, I don't know that. Weird question. I returned to the label I'm reading, and she got irate with me and huffed,
Well, do you think you could find someone who does know?
"Oh, she thinks I work here. I see. You should probably try asking someone who works here. I'm just shopping." I wasn't as polite as I could have been, but Karen and I got off on the wrong foot. I decided to find something in another aisle and walked away. She followed me.
The least you could do is call someone over.
"Ma'am, I don't work here. I don't know where they keep their stuff. I'm just shopping." This set her off.
There's no reason for rudeness. You should be fired.
I rolled my eyes and walked away again. This time she didn't follow, and I thought for sure she had finally realized her mistake. After picking out a dinner choice, I headed back towards the registers in front of the store. I see the lady again, this time talking to an actual employee. From probably 30 feet away, she sees me, points at me, and shouts,
There she is. The girl that wouldn't help me. And she swore at me.
By this time, I'm close to passing them up, and I see the awkwardness on the employee's face as he says, "Her? Ma'am, she doesn't work here." I gave him a look that I hope conveyed my sympathy for his plight as she started in on him anew. I didn't stick around to hear the rest. Next we've got, customer insults me and my coworkers during an IT support call. I work at a company that primarily supports hotel Wi-Fi, and taking calls from guests needing help connecting is part of that. Part of my job at the time of this happening was being an escalation point for unresolved guest problems. One time, roughly 2 years ago, there was some huge hurricane going through Florida, so a lot of our hotels in Alabama and northern Florida were packed with people evacuating their homes. Most people staying at these hotels were bringing most of their possessions as well. Anyways, I got a message from the guest support team asking me to take a call from one of these guests from Florida so I could help them connect the dozen or so devices they had to the Wi-Fi. For some reason, they were refusing to connect and Tier 1 support couldn't resolve it. I start talking to the guy and he is immediately hostile towards me and gave the whole, "I know what I'm doing, I'm tech savvy." I shrugged it off, and after about 30 minutes, I was able to get every single one of his devices connected. After that, he was still incredibly upset and started ranting about how incompetent the employees he had been previously talking to were, and being upset at me that I took so long to get his stuff connected too. I forget most of the crap he was spewing at me, but I'll never forget him saying, "Your techs are worthless." At this point, I should have just hung up on him, but I froze up a little and let him continue. He ended up insisting that I help him set up his Plex server, which is against the hotel's terms of service since he could potentially be using it to stream movies. I finally got my manager involved and we called the GM of the hotel and brought her up to speed while the guest was on hold. I got her conferenced into the call and immediately she began chewing him out and telling him he cannot talk to their support staff this way and that we had other more considerate guests to be assisting. He tried defending himself, telling her how long we took, but she was not having it and told him he had 2 hours to get all of his belongings and leave or she would call the police. I'm not sure why she let me stay on the call for this long, but this guy begged her to let him stay since he had just finished lugging everything he owned into his room and every other hotel around was booked. She didn't budge, however, and after scolding the guy some more, she told me I could disconnect. Never in my life had I seen justice delivered so swiftly. This is the story I always tell people when talking about crazy support calls. Please remember this the next time you consider blowing up at tech support staff. My family has put my 80-year-old grandmother $15,000 in debt. I recently was catching up with some family members from my mom's side, and it reminded me how awful my dad's side of the family is. I need to get this off my chest because this has been a thing on my mind. Background: I have never really been close to my dad's side. They're some pretty stuck-up people, and really the only people I've loved were my grandparents, and even they've made questionable decisions. They've never really been loving to me, and have always been so wrapped up in their own issues. Anytime I've seen any of my dad's family, it's always been the same conversation with each person. Hi, OP, how have you been? What kind of job do you have? And no matter the answer, the conversation will always change to how terrible everything has been for them. No jobs, hard time finding places to live, awful relationships, so on. All of my dad's side of the family lives in a different state, so me and my parents are at a comfortable distance away from them. My dad is the most responsible and stable individual of all his siblings, and keep in mind, he's second to being the youngest of 4. So I have zero sympathy for these grown adults who are all in their 50s to 60s. And it's not that they can't get jobs, they choose not to have jobs. They refuse to work either minimum wage, full-time, or hard labor jobs. Now on to what's been happening. Recently, my dad was talking to me about something that was stressing him. My grandmother called my dad, asking him if he could help her with some debt. She was only asking him, and she wasn't getting help from my grandfather. She admitted to my dad that she was in $15,000 in debt. What happened was my aunt called her and asked if she could borrow some money, around $10,000, from my grandmother to fix her boyfriend's truck. My aunt told her they just needed the money to fix up the truck so they could sell it and make a lot of money off of it. And once they sold the truck, they could pay Grandma back, no problem. So Grandma gave them the money. Well, what ended up happening, my aunt and her boyfriend fixed the truck and kept it. They came up with tons of excuses and left it at that. Then my oldest uncle asked for some money. I'll call him Oldest Uncle. Oldest Uncle came to my grandma and asked her for about $3,000 to $4,000 for car repairs. He convinced her by saying that his only source of income is being an Uber driver. So once he gets back on the road, it should be no big deal. So Grandma gave him the money. He still hasn't paid her back, and that was 3 months ago. And as for my other uncle, he's just been asking for a couple hundred every once in a while. My dad was furious. Of course he got mad at his mom. My dad has decided he will help her, but only on one condition. Anything that has to do with money goes through him first. Of course, grandmother was shocked by this, but with no choice, has gone with it. My dad made a few calls and informed every sibling that they can't ask grandmother for money anymore. My uncles protested a little bit, but when my dad laid into them how bad the debt was for grandmother, they backed off. My aunt, on the other hand, she's very furious. When my dad told her, she said,
"Don't treat me like a dang teenager,"
and then blocked him. She also called grandmother and yelled at her for telling my dad, and then blocked her too. My grandmother is just stressed and upset, and I feel really terrible for her. I feel awful for my dad and that he now has this responsibility. My grandfather doesn't know about any of this. My grandmother has done this before, and they were in a lot of debt. But my grandfather went back to work and has paid off the old debt. This is supposed to be his last year before retiring. My grandmother doesn't want to tell him because she knows that will add so much stress for him. So, because he doesn't know about what recently happened, my 80-year-old grandmother is talking about getting a job to pay off her debt. It really is a big mess. All of my dad's siblings have completely taken advantage of my grandmother and her age. They've left her with so much debt. They've put a huge responsibility on my dad. I'm just in awe over how terrible and disrespectful they are. I truly hold nothing in my heart for them after what they've done. Next we've got Karen versus Retail Veteran. For a while, I worked as a trainer for a very popular cell phone company. I would regularly visit cellular carriers and do events for customers and train employees on relevant new features and items. So I was almost always dressed very well. The most dressed down I ever got was a polo, dress pants, and dress shoes because I wanted to give a good and professional impression. However, my style of dress came with the greatest Karen bait known to man, a silver name tag. Beyond the hundreds of times I was mistaken for an employee while at the stores, This story takes place when I went grocery shopping after work one evening. That should be enough background. So, on with the actual story. I had finished up later than usual and was browsing the groceries for the next couple days at a semi-supermarket whose logo is a bullseye. I had a cart with several frozen items my wife loves, some snacks for my son, some dog food for my dog, and various other small things to carry me through. I was browsing some spices, debating on if I had enough of a few kinds to make chili, when I hear a faint noise behind me. I squeeze in a bit closer, trying to be sure I'm not blocking the aisle. No sense in being rude, right? A second or two go by, and my spider sense begins to tingle. And then, dear reader, I hear the dreaded sound that in the retail wilds is both terrifying and amusing, depending on how far away you're standing.
Excuse me?
Ah, yes, the mating call of the wild Karen. I turn around to see a specimen of at least 40 years trying desperately to be mistaken for her own daughter in what I can only assume was a pair of yoga pants, furry boots, a shirt that was strategically unbuttoned, and a huge pair of sunglasses acting as a solar panel for her
Let me speak to your manager.
haircut. My desperate plea for clemency in the form of her own ability to notice a mistake came immediately as I pushed my cart further away and swept my arm where I was standing. Sorry, didn't know I was blocking you. But alas, the story would not have made it here if that was all she needed. No, Karen did not want to graze the spice rack. She had used her cosmic powers on me without my realizing, you see, because now I was no longer shopping for dinner. I had been granted employment, and Karen was not pleased at my performance so far.
No, I need you to help me find
Some food item I don't want to malign by naming. I am a smarty by nature, you can tell, and my wife often jokes that I'm paid well to tell people where they can stick it and make them happy to hear it. But these skills are lost on the wild Karen. So is the fact that the store uniform is khakis and a red shirt, while I am in a blue and white dress shirt, dress pants, and wearing a company logo jacket that doesn't remotely look like an employee's. I decide to assume she's perhaps dazzled in bright lights without her solar panel glasses guarding her beady eyes, so I smile and politely say, "I'm sorry, I don't work here." Her eyes narrow, now looking like the shining black of a shark, and the games have now begun.
You're wearing a uniform? Don't give me that crap. You can put up that garbage when you're done doing your job.
My eyebrow rises, and in my head I hear the ringside bell. Okay, Karen, game on. So in my best, I really don't hope you're run over by a stray water buffalo voice and smile, I say, "What was it you needed help finding, ma'am?" I see the flinch. I said ma'am, and she didn't like it. Don't show weakness now, we've only started. But in the same condescending tone, she wails,
I need this item. Now show me to it.
I nod and pushed my buggy along as I head to the rear of the store. She doesn't look pleased that I'm bringing the buggy, but if she says anything she does so under her breath, and I know soon enough she'll have plenty to complain about. So I savor the moment where the only sound is the slap slap of her boots ricocheting off the floor and on the heels of her feet inside. I walk several aisles. After a dozen, she starts to huff and puff, and I can hear the faintest grumbling about why it was
So hidden away.
and
Why did she have to walk so far?
etc. Not directed at me, but I'm not deaf, so I can hear her childish tantrums just fine. Thank God she can't see the evil smile on my face. Passing the last of the groceries, I hang a left. Passing seasonal, candies, luggage, travel, etc. She's behind me in such a blurry huff of muttering anger, I don't know if she's questioning the marital status of my parents, the life choices that brought her here, or both. But she's not happy, and it sounds more and more like a car that won't start and less like a person talking to themselves. As we reach the book section, I wheel the cart right over and start down an aisle. Now the Karen is really angry.
Where's the item? Where the heck are you going? I'm looking for this item. If you're too stupid to find it, then maybe I should be talking to your manager.
This is drawing a crowd from the nearby electronics section. My plan is working out better than I had hoped. I stop in front of the kids section and grab a thin copy of what's basically a first spelling book. A few letters on the cover and a title about learning the first few letters of the alphabet. Perfect. Walking back to the red-faced Karen, I offer the book. I don't say anything, I just extend my arm, showing her the cover. Like most people would, she takes the offered book, looks at it, looks at me, and basically growls.
What the heck is this? Are you stupid? Where is your manager? You're absolutely awful.
Her wailing has attracted at least 2 employees who seem to recognize the whiny wails of the retail native Karen. One is on a small radio, calling who I assume is the manager, while another is coming our way with that terror in their eyes that only an entitled middle-aged woman with an attitude problem can cause. With a smile, I gesture to the book in her hands and say in my absolute best customer service voice, "Actually, ma'am, I thought that since you can't tell the difference between a customer and an employee, you must not be able to read. So I figured this book can help." Stunned. Silence. The poor hamster that was responsible for the complex operation of powering the Karen was working overtime. So when the employee finally makes it to us, they're unaware of what I said, only that I was smiling in a customer service kind of way. Karen was still all mouth agape at what I said when they tried a polite greeting. "Hello, is there something I can help you with tonight?" Karen was livid. She proceeded to throw the book at me, literally and figuratively, and start screaming. I dodged the book as her howls of rage wound up.
How dare you talk to me that way? I want this man's manager right now. He needs to be fired.
Oh no, she still didn't get the point. Maybe I should have started with an easier book. Dr. Seuss? Maybe something on tape? She hasn't slowed down. She's yelling like a rabid honey badger, and somewhere in that string of speech were words that vaguely made a caveman-type sense. Short phrases mostly. The employee is trying desperately to put out the fire that is Karen. Her face is so red, I swear smoke is coming from that horrible dye job. And the distant employee on the walkie is obviously begging for a manager or a priest. I step back, away from any flailing pieces, and just wait politely, taking a second to text my wife that I was held up and to expect a good story when I got home. Her response, because she knows me, "What did you do now?" I love that woman. When the manager arrives, they must have been fresh out of priests. The woman is pulled to the side and he speaks to her, trying to calm her down. The employee standing near me looks at me and, with a bewildered look, asks, "What happened?" Not wanting to spoil the punchline, I just kind of make a face and softly said, "Didn't the haircut clue you in?" Big mistake. The employee chirps with laughter. He quickly chokes off. I don't think he expected me to know the dorsal plumage of the wild Karen, but Karen has heard the sound and went from slowly lowering to a shrill string of complaining back to seething anger. Once again, she all but frothed at the mouth. After another few minutes, the manager gets her to step aside and comes over to talk to me. He begins asking all sorts of questions she obviously decided to embellish. "Why did you call her?" Delete it, I actually didn't say. "Did you throw a book at her? Were you following her?" Things like that. Things that could be claimed with only the loosest concept of reality. So, in a pleasant voice, I explained how I was shopping, and she demanded I show her where an item was, and refused to accept I didn't work here. This caused the manager to frown as he looked at me. He saw how I was dressed, and I think some lights in his eyes actually died. Probably realizing he had to actually think worse of humanity than just 5 minutes ago, and it took another piece of his soul with it. I've been there. So I smile and nod as I see him reason out that I was basically forced to find something for this woman, and all the tumblers in his mind seemed to fall into place. He must have seen this type of thing often enough to know what happened, or close enough. But I nod and say, since she can't read and might be colorblind, I got her a book on the alphabet instead. I figured if she knew how to read, it would fix all her problems. She threw the book at me, cussed like a sailor, and wanted you to fire me. Maybe I should have gotten something in crayon. The employee standing nearby is done for. He begins to laugh, hysterically. Full belly laughs that send him retreating for a door to the back room nearby. Even as he fades from sight, I can still hear the echoes of his laughter. The manager, a seasoned veteran of the retail war it seems, manages to make his initial chuckle sound like a disapproving grumble at the retreating employee. But the way his face scrunched up, I know full well he found it at least reasonably funny. Karen is mad that the employee is laughing, having at least the sense to know she's the butt of the joke, even if she didn't hear said joke. So, score 1 for her situational awareness. So she starts over to us while the manager's poor soul begins to wither inside. She's in full complain mode. Corporate this, I know X person that. It all sounds like the teacher from Peanuts if you've been in actual retail before. Turning with an admirably straight face, the manager holds up a hand and silences her through his weird, Karen charming powers. Ma'am, again her eye twitches, I'm going to have to ask that you stop harassing other shoppers and keep the volume down. A vein in her forehead begins to leap from the skin and do a little dance as she winds herself up for another tirade.
He was the one harassing me.
She almost reaches around him, jabbing her $2.99 press-ons at me like the talons she wishes they were. The manager, not happy with basically having her almost trying to wrap herself around him to get to me, holds up his hands and in a very firm voice says, Ma'am, you need to calm down. If you can't, then I'll have to ask you to leave. The blubbering, incoherent Karenisms that follow don't translate well to text, and if I had thought I could get away with it, I would have recorded it with my phone. As it was, she protested, swore, threatened, and actually raked her arm down a shelf in a tantrum, knocking down almost everything as she screamed at the manager. And that's when I knew what was coming. She wasn't going to be asked to leave. Oh no. At this point, she was about to become a captive audience. The manager called for someone in the clothing department and overwalked 2 women who, God bless them, managed to wrangle the woman and begin escorting her to the front. The employee who'd walked away laughing came over and escorted me back to grocery and told me that she was going to be detained and barred from the store. He was in a good mood, except maybe having to clean up her tantrum, and we joked about the vast levels of stupid we had been graced to see. A few minutes later, I checked out and was walking to the door when 2 police walked in, rather annoyed looking. I left with a smile on my face. Moral of the story, kids, never inflict yourself on random people and assume they have to put up with your BS. You never know when you'll meet the crocodile hunter of Karens. Next we've got, a Karen wants me to dump my boyfriend. So this happened back in the early 2000s, like 2003 to 2004. Just to give context, I had been pretty in my shell and quiet for the first 18 years of my life. After high school, my 2 really good best friends moved away. One got married and moved out of state. The other moved across the country, and I saw her, but not as frequently. The other really close friend I was still nearby had graduated the year before and attended a local community college. After I graduated, I attended the same. As I said, I was pretty in my shell, an introvert all around. My friend, we'll call her Karen, and I happened to get boyfriends right around the same time. I had dated a little during high school, nothing to write home about and nothing serious, but Karen had never dated anyone. Did I mention she was toxic? Yes, very. She constantly complained about her appearance and expected you to tell her she was wrong, but not in the way most people will do for their friends. There was this vague threat behind it, like if you didn't, it would be, or else. Karen also kept an actual enemies list of people that had upset her. This was right as people were transitioning from MySpace to Facebook en masse, so she couldn't very well go around posting anonymously on people's walls anymore. And since our other 2 friends weren't near, I was her sounding board for all negativity directed towards other people. She was also very two-faced, smiling at your face and then talking behind your back. Generally, this was directed to those outside our friends group. Oh, she also had a life-size Star Wars villain statue, not cut out, that she'd kiss before we'd go out at night, on its lips. I won't say which villain, just in case it gives her idea away, but the girl didn't even like Star Wars. Also, that was weird. Karen was also one of those crazy stalker girls that would insert herself into her crush's family in an attempt to get closer. Like, she'd show up randomly with cookies and try to get the guy's mom to teach her a family recipe.
If his family likes me, then they'll make him date me.
She had built up relationships with her obsession in her head and have a life planned out, but the guy had barely talked to her. She'd back off if they started dating someone, but that girl would go onto her list. I hate to say, but Karen was a bit homely too. One time, someone pointed out, not to her face, that she looked like the girl that played Lucy on the BBC Narnia series from the early 1990s, so crazy and homely wasn't reeling the boys in. As I said though, we happened to get boyfriends right around the same time. I started dating my boyfriend, we'll call him Henry for this, a few weeks before Karen started dating hers. You see, Henry had a friend, we'll call Frank. Frank had somehow decided Karen was someone he wanted to date. Henry and I both warned him, saying she was crazy, that you don't even want to go there. We tried to direct him to another mutual friend we knew had a thing for him and wasn't crazy. He didn't listen and asked her out. She said yes, even though she was still low-key stalking her, not make a deal of it after seeing Karen more or less settle down with her crazy. She actually put effort into their relationship, or so it seemed. She's worried about little things. Understandable, since she's never dated or apparently never kissed anyone. Things take a turn around the 3-month mark for them. Her and Frank come out for double dates with Henry and I, but you could sense some contention. They have definitely fallen out of that honeymoon phase. Shortly afterwards, they break up. I forget who dumped who. I want to say it was Karen, but it's been years now and that part is fuzzy. All I remember is Frank saying that we were right. She was crazy. She ruined him for a good 5 years afterwards with her crazy. One day in between classes at the community college, several people in the wider friends group we've become a part of since attending are playing games in this rec room on campus. It wasn't big and it was free, so a frequent hangout. Aside from a sitting area, it had a pool table, ping pong table, foosball, and near the cafeteria. Weirdly, not a lot of foot traffic into the rec room though. Karen and Frank had been over for a minute. I'm hanging out with Henry and a few other friends, just chatting away. Karen comes over and asks to speak to me in private. I'm like, no big deal, sure. Now during the time I had been dating Henry, I had come out of my shell. I was more outgoing. I was growing a backbone and becoming intolerant of behavior I didn't think was healthy to be around. Karen.
OP, I broke up with Frank.
Me. Yeah, I know. Karen.
Well, you know what that means.
Me. That you want to find another boyfriend?
Well, you have to break up with Henry now.
Me. What? Karen.
He's friends with Frank. If I'm hanging out with you and Henry and Frank shows up, then I'll have to leave. It's like you're cheating on me with Frank.
Me again. What? Karen.
You have to break up with Henry. It's only right. I'm your friend. You have to do what I say.
Me. Henry and I are happy. Why would I break up with him?
It's not like you're going to marry the guy. Just break up with him.
And for a brief millisecond, I thought about it because she was my friend and I knew her longer. Then I remember all the negativity she brought with her and crazy. Yeah, I may not end up marrying Henry, but that doesn't matter. Why should I give up my happiness because you don't have a boyfriend anymore?
If I don't have a boyfriend, you don't have a boyfriend. That's how friends work. I'd break up with my boyfriend if you broke up with yours. Fine. If you keep dating Henry, I can't be your friend anymore. You have to choose. It's either me or him.
Me shrugs. Well, guess we're not friends anymore. I'm not dumping Henry. Goodbye, Karen. After that, she glared at me from across whatever room we happened to be in. She also tried to flirt with Henry whenever she saw me coming towards him. He shut that down real quick and even pulled her off to the side and gave her a dressing down. She went away crying because the truth hurts. Funny though, Henry never ended up on her list, or so I heard from another friend Karen pushed away. Henry and I continued to date. She went on a date with a guy that transferred in from Canada. He was going to a university nearby, but had to take some courses at the community college. It wasn't an exclusive thing, but she was going off like it was. The guy went on a date with another girl like 2 days later. In the middle of that date, he asked the girl to marry him. Seriously, out of the blue. They ended up married and they're still together. Moved back to Canada. They've got a couple of kids. I lost touch with her after that. She still talked to my other close friends, but they weren't buying what she was selling and grew tired of the way she treated them too. I did end up marrying Henry, FYI. We dated for 3 years, got hitched, and have been married for almost 14 years. Still going strong. Got a couple of kiddos too. From what I hear, Karen alienated lots of people afterwards. She was very hateful and negative until somehow she started working with kids. Karen actually became nice and positive until she met a male Karen. A Kyle? With Kyle, she went back to her old ways. And they hate and make people's lives miserable together, I hear. 3,200 is less than 3,600, and somehow I need to explain this. My most recent place of employment was a small personal injury law firm. My job there was mainly to help clients talk to their auto insurance companies and body shops and get their cars fixed. We handled a lot of car accident cases. A lot of clients have a lot of questions about the process, and I don't mind because I get that they're upset and out of a car, and the insurance claim process can be a complicated one, and most people don't have any experience dealing with them. But sometimes people would just ask the most dumb questions, and this man was one of the dumbest. So for some background, the insurance company here had agreed to pay for 85% of the damages, while the client paid for the remaining 15%. The client had been made aware of this multiple times and was okay with that. I get a call from the insurance company one day saying that the body shop was ready to take the client, and they got the total repair estimate reduced from $3,600 to $3,200. They sent me a copy of the estimate, and I call the shop to confirm this. The shop confirms that they have agreed to the price reduction and will repair the client's car in full for $3,200. Great news, right? I call the client with what I think is great news. Me. Hi, client. I just wanted to let you know that the shop is ready for you to bring your car in. And also, the estimate has been reduced to $3,200. Client.
I thought it was 3,600.
Me. Yes, but the insurance company got the shop to reduce their price to $3,200. Don't worry. I confirmed with the shop that they would be repairing your car in full for that price. Client.
No. I don't want that. I want it to be 3,600.
Me. You want the estimate to be higher? Client.
Yes, I want the insurance company to pay more.
At this point, I figured that maybe the client was confused and thought that the insurance company was originally paying $3,600 of the bill and was now only paying $3,200. So I tried to clear it up. Me. I'm not sure if we're on the same page here. I meant that the grand total of the bill has been reduced from 3.6 to 3.2. So the insurance company is paying 85% of 3.200, and you will be paying 15% of 3.200. Client.
So the insurance company is paying less now?
Me. Yes, but you will also be paying less. Client.
I don't want the insurance company to pay less. I want them to pay more.
Me. If the insurance company pays more by using the 3,600 estimate, which they will not, then you will also have to pay more. So it's in your best interest for them to use the 3,200 estimate. Client.
But then they will be paying less. I do not want them to pay less. I want them to pay more.
Ladies and gentlemen, at this point I was losing it. Fortunately, the attorneys have allowed us to get a certain level of sharp and snappy with clients who are being difficult. And normally, I am a very patient and sympathetic person when it comes to clients, but explaining basic mathematics to a 30-something-year-old man is one of the things that will break that patience. Me. Yes, but you will also be paying less. Client.
How would I be paying less?
Me. Because 3,200 is less than 3,600. Client.
So the insurance company will be paying less?
So will you.
You're not making any sense. How will I be paying less? Tell me. Tell me how I will be paying less.
Me. So 15% of 3,600 is 540, and 15% of 3,200 is 480, and 480 is less than 540.
Where are you getting this 15% from?
You're paying 15% of the bill. Remember?
Why am I paying 15%? Since when? Nobody told me about this.
Me. Since, like 2 weeks ago? And coworker has definitely told you multiple times. I told you about it like 10 minutes ago. I also told you yesterday.
This is ridiculous. I want to talk to coworker.
Coworker was a girl who had a tendency to come in at whatever time she chose. Sometimes she'd show up at 8 like the rest of us. Sometimes she'd waltz in at 10:30. Sometimes she'd come in after lunch. Sometimes she wouldn't come in at all. And I'd rarely get any notice about it. Why she was never fired for this, I don't know. Me. Coworker is not in yet. I would have offered to take a message here, but he was being difficult as heck, so I decided to be minimally helpful to him.
Well, when is she coming in?
Me. I'm not too sure.
Is she coming in at all today?
I don't know.
Do you even work in the same office?
Yes.
Fine. I'll be calling back in 10 minutes to speak to coworker.
You are free to do so, but I cannot guarantee that she will be here in 10 minutes.
So you don't know what time she's coming in, and you don't know if she's coming in today? Do you know anything at all?
Bold words from a man who doesn't know how numbers work. I finally offered to take a message, and I thought that would be the end of it. Until 10 minutes later. Client calling in.
Hi, I'm client. I'd like to speak to coworker, please.
Me. She's still not here. Next we've got Crazy Entitled Aunt and the Italian Restaurant. This happened almost 40 years ago. I'm posting it as a thanks for reading the other stories. This one is more funny and entitled rather than infuriating and entitled. My immediate family was, for the most part, perfectly normal and boring. We were not prone to outbursts and tantrums. It was very calm and quiet. Everyone got along, and we were pretty happy with our boredom. I tell you that so you understand that I had absolutely no experience at all with people prone to screaming fits. This happened when we were visiting for Great Auntie's memorial service. I was 12. Crazy Aunt insisted that we all go out to dinner at her favorite Italian restaurant. It was just the best. She said so, and she was never wrong. The gimmick here was a little flag of Italy on the table. When you wanted more dinner rolls, you raised the flag. This is important. Flag up, you get rolls. Flag down, no rolls. Remember that. The 6 of us are seated. They take our drink order and bring the bread basket. The cast has a new member. P.U. for my poor long-suffering uncle who will one day be made a saint for being married to Crazy Aunt for over 20 years. Some of you commented in my first post that he was an enabler. He wasn't. He was a victim as well. He couldn't leave her without leaving Emily. It started with the drink order. Crazy Aunt.
We will have 5 sweet teas.
Dad. I'll have a Coke. Mom. I'll have a Coke. Me. Tea. No sugar. This is a mortal sin in the South. Crazy Aunt.
Don't be silly. You can't have sweet tea without sugar.
Me. I don't like sugar.
That's stupid. Bring her sweet tea.
Waitress winked at me. Yes, ma'am. Poor uncle. I think I'd like a Coke as well. Emily. I'd like a Coke. Crazy Aunt.
We drink Pepsi, not Coke. We are having sweet tea.
The waitress brought us our requested drinks. Crazy Aunt was growing agitated. Crazy Aunt likes to control everything and everyone, so she told us what to order for dinner. I'm not going to get into an ethical debate here, but I refused to eat veal. She demanded we all have the veal. I refused. I knew this would set her off, but oh well, I'm not eating veal. My parents, after I had explained to them years earlier why I would not eat veal, refused to eat it as well. Did I mention I get my I don't give a crap quality from my parents? Well, they didn't give a crap either. They were perfectly capable of ordering whatever the heck they wanted, so they did. I had lasagna. It was good. My mother's was better. Once we ordered what we wanted, it emboldened poor uncle, and he stepped out of line and ordered something else as well. Crazy Aunt was not having it.
You are getting the veal.
Uncle. No, I feel like something else tonight.
The veal is the best.
I still want something else.
You wouldn't like it.
I'm sure I will.
You don't know what you're talking about.
I know what I like.
Well, you can't order it.
Yes, I can.
I said no.
Well, I'm ordering it.
You always get the veal.
Because it's your favorite and you make me. I don't even like Italian food.
Yes, you do. It's your favorite.
I want the lasagna.
Dang it, Uncle. Order what I tell you to order.
No, lasagna.
Emily. I'll have the lasagna too.
You can't have that. You are allergic.
Emily. No, I'm not.
I'm your mother. I know what you can and can't eat.
Crazy Aunt tells the waitress.
Bring her the veal.
The whole time this is going on, I'm looking from one to the other like watching a tennis match. Back and forth, with the pitch of her voice getting more and more shrill with each sentence. I was fairly certain that when we left, bats would have been summoned. I'm just watching them and eating a dinner roll. The food arrives and everyone got what they wanted, even Emily, much to the fury of Crazy Aunt. Then it happens. Poor Uncle raises the flag. Crazy Aunt puts it down. Uncle puts it back up. Aunt takes it back down. Up and down, up and down. I see the bread guy hovering at the edge of the table, waiting. Flag goes up and he rushes in to drop off the new basket before it can go back down. Crazy Aunt grabs the basket and throws it at the kid that delivered it. To save time in typing, every time Crazy Aunt speaks, the flag goes down. The rest of the time, it goes up.
You don't need any more bread.
Uncle. But I want more.
I said no.
Uncle. I'm an adult. I can have more bread if I want.
No, you can't.
Why? Just tell me why I can't have more bread.
Because I said so. You aren't listening to me.
I'm hungry and want more bread.
You wouldn't be if you had ordered the veal.
Yes, I would. I always am, but you never let me have more bread. Tonight, I get more.
Me. I want some more bread too. Crazy Aunt.
No, you have had enough.
Me. No, I really think I want more.
Well, you are wrong.
Me. You seem upset.
That's because you people aren't listening to me.
Yes, we are. We just don't care. We want more bread.
Dad, to me, while trying not to laugh at how absurd this is.
You aren't helping.
Me. I think you want more bread too. At this point, the whole darn place is watching our table and the battle over the flag. I'm fairly sure there were people taking bets to see who would win. In the middle of the confusion, a nice lady sitting at another table nearest Emily tapped her and slipped their fresh bread basket to her. Emily took a roll and slipped it to me. I took one and slipped it to my father. Then it went to my mother, who, after taking a roll for herself, slipped one onto poor Uncle's plate. Crazy Aunt saw it and grabbed for it. Uncle was faster. He shoved the whole bread roll into his mouth at once. It was a big roll. The waitress approached the table to check to see if we needed anything, and Crazy Aunt demanded she bring the check. Me. I want dessert. Chocolate cake. Uncle. Sounds great. I'll have some.
Emily.
Me too. Dad. I'll have apple pie. Mom. I'll have cheesecake. Bring cheesecake for Crazy Aunt. She loves cheesecake.
Crazy Aunt.
No, we are not having dessert. We are getting the check and leaving. Now.
Dad. No, we aren't.
Crazy Aunt.
Well, I'm leaving. You can all walk home.
Dad. I drove. It's our car.
I know. Give me the keys.
Dad. Nope. Crazy Aunt.
You have to give me the keys. I live here. You are just visiting.
Dad. Yes, I'm just visiting. With my family. In our car.
It's my state.
I don't care. It's my car and you can't have it. You're a terrible driver anyway.
No, I'm not.
Dad. You drive the wrong way on the freeway.
No, I don't. It's the other cars going the wrong way.
You get lost in your own neighborhood.
Not always.
You are not driving my car.
Yes, I am.
No, you aren't. That, ladies and gentlemen, continued while we ate dessert, paid the check my father was buying. As we walked to the car, and for the entire trip back to their house, my father drove. We dropped them off and went back to our hotel room. Dad. Has your sister always been this crazy? Mom. No, it started when she was about 3. Dad. What happened? Mom. She started speaking in complete sentences. Dad. Ah. Next we've got plot twist. I used to work here 6 years ago. I used to work at a very popular high-end grocery store in my area. I worked in almost every department. I started there when I was 15 and took whatever hours I could to make extra money until I finished college when I was 21. I made a lot of friends there. I met my now husband there, and this particular store happens to be the nearest grocery store to where I live now. I shop there regularly and pop in to visit some of my friends who I made who still work there. Fast forward, it's been 6 years since I left to get a full-time job in my career field. Hubby and I are married, and now we have a 5-month-old son. I had a C-section, so a few weeks after giving birth, my doctor gave me the okay to drive, and a month or so after that, I felt confident enough to go get a couple groceries alone with my little nugget. I put him in a baby wrap so I wouldn't have to lug in his carrier. Anyway, all this is worth mentioning because I just had a baby, so my hair was a wreck. Probably had baby spit on one or both of my shoulders. It was basically in pajamas, and not to mention, literally wearing my infant. The other thing that's worth mentioning is that the store in question has recently displaced literally all of their products to make room for a new beer and wine section that they want front and center when you walk in. I used to know where everything was in that store, but that was 6 years ago and before they moved everything. Okay, now here's the story. I don't remember what I was looking for, but I was just standing in front of a shelf when a woman walks up to me. Doesn't say hello or excuse me. She just gets in my way, so I back up. The kicker is that I actually vaguely recognize this lady. She's a regular, and I had probably checked out her items at least a few times while I had been working there. As soon as I made eye contact with her, she asks,
Where are the pickles?
Me. Oh, sorry, I don't know. Her.
Why not?
Me. Caught off guard and a bit sleep deprived, so my brain is not firing on all cylinders. I don't know off the top of my head. Her.
If they're going to move everything on me, then you should at least know where it's moved to, so that I don't have to wander around the store.
Me. Feeling like I shouldn't have to point this out due to my appearance and the fact that my infant kid is strapped to my chest. I don't work here.
Yes, you do.
Me. Contemplating if the last few years were a hallucination and if I do still work here. No, I really don't. Her. Getting mad now.
Yes, you do. I've seen you standing at that information stand up front. I realize you're not on the clock now.
She gestures vaguely at me.
But why can't you just tell me where to find what I'm looking for?
I haven't worked here for over 6 years. She just stared at me and said nothing. I was exhausted and just wanted to finish up and go home, so I just walked away. Not sure if she didn't believe me or if she just didn't know what to say after realizing her mistake. I feel bad that I wasn't nicer. I know she wasn't very nice to me, but it's not her fault they rearranged the whole store she's been going to for probably 10 years or more. I was just so tired and not even processing the situation, so I just escaped the first moment I could. I hope that lady found her pickles without harassing anyone else. Next we've got Berserk Tyrannosaurus Karen. This happened years ago, more like a decade, back when I was working as a chef/manager of one of the top-rated restaurants in the city. Not number one, but not far off either. We might not have been the best, but we did our best. Anyway, this meant that I was going to a lot of tastings on my free time, and sometimes on my days off, I would be down at the liquor store at 7 a.m. to get in line for a particular vintage's release. Basically, some wines were always available, others came to the LCBO only in limited supply releases. Anyway, this meant that I was going to a lot of tastings on my free time, and sometimes on my days off, I would be down at the store at 7 a.m. to get in line for a particular vintage's release. Basically, some wines were always available. Others came to the LCBO only in limited supply releases. These were first come, first served, so if it was something special I really wanted, I had to be there before opening. This was one such case. I had been waiting outside in the blistering early February cold, -31 Celsius I believe it was that day. Don't know how cold it was with the wind, but I was well bundled up. People who stayed in their cars might miss out on some things. As I had mentioned, it was first come, first served. so there was some real competition. There were about 9 of us there, plus the parking lady watching us from her little booth. I knew almost everyone except one 30-ish lady, dressed to the nines, and boy, maybe 20-ish who was with her. There was also some older man who I had seen at another release earlier that year, but never got to talk to. The rest of them were all people in charge of buying for restaurants, and one guy who was there to buy for a rich guy who lived up in the hills. Pretty much everyone was at least outwardly nice. The manager/handling customers kind of talk was just automatic. We were all standing in the cold. I was leaning against the building and looking out at the line. There was a store employee visibly inside getting stuff ready, and most of the people in line were watching them. Eventually, the doors open and we all roll in. I immediately grab a pallet of a sparkling wine, which was just amazing that year. It was right around from the door, first on the list. Bright, but still with the biscuit you expect of actual champagne, even though this was not technically champagne. So now I am rolling my pallet through, looking back and forth with craned neck for what I was really there for, and I found it. Ella Valley Vineyards Ever Red. Delicious, but not well known. I wanted a whole pallet of this as well, so I called over a worker who was standing nearby and asked if they can bring this to the cash for me. I would be over there to pay for it soon. I continue my search and find the Pio Cesare release. It's an excellent year for the Barolo, so we are actually getting 2 full pallets. I finally find them and start moving the boxes from one to the other. As I finish, I start walking towards the cash, pulling my double-loaded pallet of vintage Barolo. Other than this, everything else we will be able to order. This is all we can really fit in the van anyway. I place an order with the same worker I had before. Stuff from the general list. They'd deliver later this week. Great, I was done. I called the brothers sitting in the van to tell them it was time to move everything to the van. So they backed up to the door and we started on our way to meet them. That's when it happened. Karen.
Excuse me? Hello?
Karen.
Hello? What is wrong with you?
Snapping her fingers as loud as I think fingers can be snapped.
Hey! Yes, you. You're the manager, right? This employee has been very unhelpful.
Admittedly, I was dressed kinda like a manager, but bundled up to resist cold. So I guess it wasn't that unreasonable for her to think I had also just told some employees what to do. Unfortunately, this situation was already rather out of control, as the woman she was manhandling was the manager of another restaurant, not an employee. Not that it would be okay to pull anyone around by their shirt collar/bow tie. The woman was struggling. Nice old restaurant manager, piteously. I told you I don't work here. Let go, you're hurting me. Karen was a roughly 30-ish bottle blonde wearing Louis Vuitton and Louboutin shoes. She was wielding a bottle of $500 Dom Perignon, expensive champagne, like a club in her right hand as she dragged the woman behind her by the collar. I frankly couldn't believe what I was seeing. This was about when the young guy who I had seen with her earlier appeared. Sad guy. I'm so sorry, Miss Karen. I'm so sorry. I couldn't find it. It's not there. Karen.
You idiot. Find it or don't come back.
At this point, the actual manager had arrived. Actual manager. Miss, please put down that bottle. What's the problem? I'm sure I can help you. Just let go of the nice woman and put the bottle down, please. Me, shock in my voice. Pardon, miss, but please don't hold other people like that. Please let her go, now. Karen.
This jerk refused to serve me. Refused to serve me. Do you have any idea who I am?
At this point, she's literally screaming, tugging their collar for emphasis. People have started coming to see what was going on. I turn behind me and one of the security guards has run up to me. Lucky me, it was the bigger one. I can hear someone in the background calling the police, not on the phone, shouting to the police down the street outside. I look at the security guard. He's a huge guy, works as a bouncer on his off days at some of the clubs in the market. He's making a very concerned face. He is enormous, 6'5" or so, easily 350 pounds, part muscle, part paunch. He's also a very kind, gentle, and caring person. Berserker Karen's attention is off me for the moment as she screams at the manager. I motion for him to go to the right. I start moving slowly around her to the left. We're used to working together like this because we all get together one night a week after work. The guy also works out at my gym. We both move slowly at first, then rush in quickly. Karen isn't exactly imposing, even in her rage. We just rush her while she's still distracted, yelling at the younger guy manager. The guard grabs her left arm, which has been holding the bottle. He plucks the bottle out of her hand as I'm grabbing her fingers with one hand, pulling them away from the other person's collar, then spin her around as I make sure with my other arm that the other person didn't fall down. She's quite old after all. Once the old lady is okay, I grab Karen's arm and give it to the guard who has already put the bottle down. So he now has her firmly in his grip, impossible for her to escape as she continues screaming that we're all going to lose our job. It only took a few minutes for police to arrive, maybe 5 at most. The manager has failed to calm Karen down. There is a local and a provincial police office not far away. Plus, the street between the mall and the liquor store is one of the patrols that is constantly under surveillance. The cops hang out at the mall or out in front of the store a lot because of how homeless people try to beg there. Anyway, when the cops finally arrived, they took Karen away. She was still ranting hysterically. Never did find out who she was. She just kept screaming at me.
You can't do this. I'll have your head. You're all fired. All of you. Police, arrest them. Arrest them.
She seemed not to understand at all what was going on. The police came and got her from guard, who was more than happy to be rid of her. She kept screaming about injustice and how she was gonna have us all fired and how I was the worst manager in history. I was so busy all the time back then that I didn't take the time to follow through and find out what happened. But I am sure she must have at least been charged with resisting arrest and probably more. Anyway, people who behave like that at that age usually don't learn. But at least for the time being, the police got her off the street. Tyrannosaurus Karen was also banned from the store. That much I was told by the manager on my next visit about a week later. I never did see her again at any events or releases. So Karen, what did you think of today's stories?
They were horrible.
Horrible? How dare you? These were some of the best we've ever read.
Oh, shut up, Mr. Reddit. It's ridiculous what people like myself have to go through. Dealing with stupid people like yourself and your subscribers.
Look, Karen, you can say whatever you want about me, but don't you talk about my re-army.
Tch, re-army. Most of your viewers aren't even subscribed to your channel. 70% if I'm correct.
Well, I can't argue with that. That's true. Most of my viewers don't actually subscribe for some reason.
It's because you're stupid, Mr. Reddit.
No, I'm not. All right, guys, let's prove Karen wrong by making sure you're subscribed to the channel and turn on notifications.
Pah, they're not going to listen to you.
And if you'd like me, or Karen,
What?
to record a special message for you, come visit me on Fiverr, link pinned in the comments below.
Never.
And join as a channel member today, and Karen will give you a special shout out in the next video.
Like heck I will.